11,000 workforce that the post office has, and also looking into its business plan heading into the future as well. So we will be speaking to one of the business practitioners. We'll be speaking to Anush Ruplal, who is the South African Post Office Business Rescue Practitioner, to speak to us about what happens now that the plan has been adopted, and also looking into the plan itself and the proposals that are in the plan, and when they believe that the post office will in turn become more profitable, or become profitable, actually not even more profitable, but become profitable and self-sustainable as well, considering of course that you also have the post bank, which is linked to the post office, although it is a separate entity, and looking at some of the properties as well that are owned by the post office. Some of them of course could be leased to the post bank, or even sold to the post bank. So that discussion is going to come up at just after 5 o'clock. That is part of our interview conversation. And maybe any questions and suggestions that you have for the post office, you can send those through on 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Also on the show this afternoon, we speak to Ibrahim Dean, independent commentator and researcher, following its investigation on the ongoing violence in Sudan. The United States of America has accused Sudan's rival forces of committing war crimes, and also adding that the fighting has caused grievous human suffering. So we'll be speaking to Ibrahim Dean around that. He'll be joining us at around 20 past 3. And something new on the show, every Thursday we'll have Tourism Thursdays, where we focus on the tourism sector, the tourism industry, some of the innovations that are coming through from the various stakeholders in the tourism sector. We'll be discussing those every Thursday at around 4:45. And today we'll be joined by Baba, who is the head of destination marketing at Gauteng Tourism, to speak about some of the available tourist attractions that are in Gauteng. So that conversation is coming up at 4:45. So those are some of the stories that we have on the agenda this afternoon. Anything else that you'd like to place on the agenda on 0614 104 107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
So police in Guyana have confirmed that they are looking for a suspect who fatally stabbed a 42-year-old woman and wounded a man who tried to assist during a vicious gender-based violence attack. Following this dreadful incident, Limpopo Provincial Commissioner Lieutenant General Thembi Hadebe has lauded the bravery of the men who tried to rescue the victim from the perpetrator. However, though, the suspect remains at large, and the police are urging anyone with information about the suspect's whereabouts to contact them. We speak to Brigadier Hlulani Mashaba, who is the spokesperson for the police in Limpopo. Brigadier, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What happened in this incident?
Good afternoon, Aldrin and SAFM listeners. Yes, we can confirm that there is a dark cloud in Guyana. This is after a 42-year-old woman was actually wounded, fatally wounded, allegedly by the boyfriend in this regard. So the information that we have at our disposal is that the pair had domestic challenges. So as a result that they had domestic challenges, the girlfriend went to her friend seeking refuge and trying to run away from the abusive boyfriend. And as a result, when she was there, the boyfriend went to this house, apparently the friend's house, to the deceased, and then he gained entry in one of the doors that were not properly locked due to the fact that there was construction taking place there. And upon entering, gaining entry there, he started stabbing the deceased. He stabbed her to death, and then as the friend to the deceased tried to assist, he stabbed the friend as well, and then the friend managed to actually get outside, call upon the community to come and assist. And then there was this brave man as well who came there trying to assist. He was also stabbed. So this is a very, very worrying incident. Aldrin, like I've indicated, more so that this happened when we are observing the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. And another thing that is so worrying the emotional scars, the trauma that the children have suffered. Because remember, she went with her 4 children there by the friend's house. So they've witnessed this ordeal, and, it is not a nice scene or a nice story to tell. The Provincial Commissioner is very worried about this incident, but we are confident that the police will make a breakthrough in this regard, because obviously the suspect is known. It's only a matter of time before we apprehend him.
Yeah. So did the altercation actually start at the friend's house, or was there something that happened before they ended up at the friend's house?
Yes, it was something that happened before, and where they were staying together, and then she decided to go to the friend's house to seek refuge. And then upon realizing that the girlfriend has gone to the friend's house, he then went there and got entry through, through one of the doors. Yeah, but according to the information that we have at our disposal, is that they had domestic challenges that were ongoing for some time.
Mm. Okay, so there's a history of abuse there as well.
Yes,
and then let's quickly speak about the friend and how the friend tried to intervene.
Yes, the friend actually tried everything in her power to assist the friend in this regard. I mean, by accommodating her friend together with the 4 children. It's not an easy thing to do, but she had to do that so that she saved the life of her friend. But what is more surprising here, this man was ruthless. I mean, how do you go stabbing 3 people in the process? Because he started with the girlfriend, and again with the friend, and then later with the brave man who thought he can go and outsmart this perpetrator. But unfortunately, it was not to be. So all of them, they were stabbed, and then this man evaded an arrest by running away.
Yeah.
But we definitely have launched a manhunt. Like I've indicated, sooner we will be able to apprehend him.
Yeah. And how are the 2 others doing, the ones who survived?
They are doing well, especially the last one, the brave man is now getting medical attention at a nearby hospital, but the other one is doing well.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That is Brigadier Hlulani Mashaba, who's the spokesperson for the police. Now, based on this story, because when I heard it in the news and I heard about the so-called brave man who tried to intervene, the question that came to my mind is, what do you do when you see a couple fighting? If there is a physical altercation between a couple, what do you do? Do you look away? Do you go about your business? Do you intervene? And how far do you go with that sort of intervention? Because then you also run the risk of actually being attacked. We had a conversation with my friend actually just over the weekend about neighbors, and if you hear your neighbors fighting, as the other neighbor, what do you do? What do you do? Because chances are that if there is, let's say for instance, a fatal incident that happens while there is this altercation, that you might be called as a neighbor to come and testify, and all you can testify on is the so-called blood-curdling screams like we heard during the Oscar Pistorius case that was heard, and the shots that were fired, and later on that there was silence. But is there something that you can do before you even get to the part of there being silence and intervene? What's your take on it, and how do you approach it? 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086-000-2032. Or maybe you've tried to intervene in an incident. What happened?
Get ready for an adventure of a lifetime with SABC TV Licenses Ultimate Competition. Feel the pulse-pounding excitement of a Bundesliga match live on an all-expenses-paid journey you'll never forget. Or embrace the rhythm of your dreams at the Coachella Music Festival. The choice is yours. A football fan's paradise or a music lover's haven. Simply pay your TV license, then head to www.winnerholidaywithsabctvlicenses.co.za for a chance to win big. And don't forget, there are incredible weekly prizes up for grabs too. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Mamelodi Sundowns and Egyptian outfit Pyramids FC have collected maximum points in their Group A opening matches. They now tackle each other in search of victory. Masandawana want to ensure their visitors walk away without any joy, but Pyramids FC are confident they will upset the 2016 champs. This is the CAF Champions League. Roerkop battles it out with East Cairo. Experience the African flavor of the beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Pyramids FC on Sunday 10 December at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
0614-104-107. Let's take your voice notes.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Aldrin, this is very dangerous and very tricky one. I think on my side, if my neighbor's fighting with the wife, I will call other neighbors as well. I need to call other neighbors so that I must not be alone, because the man may overpowering you and it could go wrong. So I will call other people and also alert more people so that more people will come so that we can intervene. By intervening by yourself, it's very, very dangerous. Theo Cape Town. Thank you so much, Aldrin. Good show, always.
Yeah, thank you so much. Intervening by yourself, of course, very dangerous. There is the risk also that you could get attacked, like in this particular case where we heard about the so-called brave man that intervened, and then he was also stabbed. And on the one part is also the moral question, and the moral question is, when you see something happening, like for instance a fight and assault, what do? I think the moral answer is that you need to intervene. But then you also need to look out for yourself. Remember the story of Mandla Hlwajayo, who used to be an actor on Generations, also former DJ on Jose FM. When a woman was mugged, he tried to intervene and he was shot dead. So those are some of the risks that you run.
Hi, Aldrin. I once rescued my neighbor. The husband was busy, breaking the windows of the house, breaking the car and everything. I can hear the kids screaming. And then what happened, I just pressed my panic button, and then my armed response came quickly. And then they phoned the police, and then the lady in the process managed to jump the wall and then came to my place, and then I opened the door, and then I tried to give a refuge, and then the armed responded, and then they called the police, and then the police managed to arrest this guy who was busy abusing the wife and breaking the windows and everything. This is anonymous in Polokwane. The issue happened, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. Thank you.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
It's 24 minutes after 3 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Ibrahim Dean, independent commentator and researcher. So following its investigations on the ongoing violence in Sudan, the United States of America has accused Sudan's rival forces of committing war crimes, and also adding that the fighting has caused grievous human suffering. However, the finding does not include sanctions being imposed on leaders or members of either side. Ibrahim Dean now joining us on the line. Ibrahim, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Of what effect is it if Anthony Blinken says the expansion of this needless conflict between the RSF and the SAF has caused grievous human suffering, and also speaking about the non-adherence to international law?
So it's, a U.S. State Department assessment of the conflict. And yes, it has caused 9,000 dead, 6 million, to flee, and grievous, there's instances of mass rape. But the U.S. has, one, it takes the sanctions it adopted on 3 former overseas officials, that don't have much to do with the conflict, which kind of shows that the U.S. is still intricately involved in the conflict. 2 is, it's a bit disingenuous, and that's why it has no real international effect, because the U.S., while saying there's war crimes in Sudan, has refused to even look at what's happening in Gaza at the moment. And I think, the U.S. is involved in the mediation efforts between the two parties, between the RSF and the Sudanese military that was happening in Jeddah, or is still happening, but it has come to an impasse. And I think, the international community, having supported the military and having supported the military between 2019 and 2021, is now, in a sense, the chicken that come off the roast and is fearful of actually trying to be too critical, because they would be critical of their own support of these two men in the interceding 3 years.
Yeah, and when it comes to the RSF, Anthony Blinken says that the RSF and their allied militias committed crimes against humanity and ethnic cleansing, which speaks to the issue around genocide. But why is the U.S. not imposing sanctions?
That's a valid point, because it's their own assessment. It's not the U.S. The UN's assessment. Ethnic cleansing should necessitate under U.S. foreign policy that the sanctions is applied on him. But in a sense, the U.S. wants to have its cake and eat it. They can make a noise, but also then deal with the guy. Yes, the charges are quite credible. There have been many UN bodies pointing out, the RSF in areas in Darfur, in Yala, where there's been mass rapes. And the RSF, we have to note, grew out of the Janjaweed militia, which did commit genocide and ethnic cleansing in the early 2000s in the same area. But the U.S. Wants to be seen as doing good, but is actually involved in the conflict, in supporting. There's just been an aid package passed, a military package to the UAE and Saudi Arabia in the past 2 days. The UAE supplies the RSF, with most of its weapons. So, we can see how, it's a State Department initiative, but we can, it does point to the hypocrisy in the sense of the U.S. administration in how it's dealing with conflict in general and in Sudan.
Yeah. Is it possible at all to return to civilian rule since the ousting of Omar al-Bashir?
So, the issue with the ousting was, the ouster was a coup.
Yeah.
And when the military goes out of the barracks, it's very difficult for it to come back. Or it doesn't only in Portugal in 1974 that happened. And the interceding 3 years, the sanctions relief, and it was not really tied to any real proper conditionality. And that's where we saw the situation is now. Now, there have been talks between, Abdel Fattah Burhan and Hamidti and those two parties in Jeddah. It's actually, the attempt now is to at least have a ceasefire to try and stop, the conflict from worsening and mutating. Because, at the moment, there's no even talk about the democratic process. It's just trying to get them to the table, trying to get the conflict to stop. And that's being unsuccessful, and mainly because of regional power. So the UAE, for example, is supporting the RSF. And, despite the many calls, the UAE doesn't have any sanctions issued on it. No, there's just been a military package passed in recent days. And that's actually emboldening the regional powers. So Sudan is no longer just about Sudanese. It's about the region and Sudan's strategic location in it. And until there's action taken against these regional actors, they're going to continue with impunity and fueling the conflict.
Yeah, Ibrahim Dean, thank you so much. Independent commentator and researcher there on the findings of a USA-led investigation around the ongoing conflict in Sudan that is between the SAF as well as the Rapid Support Forces. And as I said there, Anthony Blinken in that statement that was released said that the RSF and the allied militias committed crimes against humanity and ethnic cleansing. And as some have said, probably a bit hypocritical coming from the United States, considering its stance when it comes to other wars. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. Remember that we're also streaming live on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Just search for our pages there, and you can follow us live on those pages and see what's happening in studio.
With the headlines at 3:30, I am Dino Motaung. Good afternoon. ANC struggle veteran Mavuso Msimang says, like many South Africans, he had hope when President Cyril Ramaphosa took over from his predecessor Jacob Zuma in 2018. In other news, Welcome residents in the Free State have lamented their living conditions, saying there is a sewage running through their communities. They addressed President Cyril Ramaphosa and various ministers and officials during the district development model presidential imbizo in the area. And consumer confidence has hit its lowest festive season reading in more than 2 decades. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And let's get a traffic update with Rob Byrne. Good afternoon.
Yeah, very good afternoon. Motorists in Mpumalanga, just north of Peter Retief, there's an extended wait to get through the N2. There is a couple of trucks that have collided this afternoon, just on the northern side as you go out of Peter Retief and you split from the R33 onto that N2 towards Ermelo. It's probably 20 k's north of Peter Retief. That's where the truck is, or the trucks have crashed, and there's quite a backlog on a queue both directions. Joburg today, N1 going south, slow already down towards the Winnemandela exit. There is a right lane closure for roadworks there. Also crash on Vidkoppen Road near Waterford if you're leaving four ways en route towards North Riding side. There's some delays there. Durban, very heavy backlogs on the N2 coming south, arriving from the airport direction Durban. This is another crash in the roadworks between Mshlanga and the M25 Gateway exit. That backlog almost back as far as Sabaya. There's some heavy pressure on the M13 both ways between Westville and Sherwood into the sort of reduced N2 bridge. Cape Town this afternoon looking fairly busy on the N1 outbound, slow to Plattekloof Hill, and then another queue as you line up through towards the Okavango Road exit. And we've seen this week, again, very busy in the central Cape Town area, particularly inbound on Helen, Suzman, outbound on High Level Road, and Bayton truck all jammed from Whale Street, moving out of the CBD towards the elevated freeway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Dumi Nkapele.
And let's get a sports update with Dumi Nkapele. And the top story is, I wanted to say Drunken Kune. I don't know if it works.
Oh my goodness. Why will it space so?
Drunken Kune. Does it work?
Hey,
don't arrive at work drunk, guys. Come on now. You need to respect the job.
That headline,
Yeah.
Spice. But yeah, a very good afternoon to you. Hope you're doing well on this Thursday afternoon. And we're starting things off with news from Premier Soccer League club Kaizer Chiefs. They say that they've suspended and removed the captaincy of longtime goalkeeper Itumeleng Khune. And this is after media reports emerging of Khune reporting to training under the influence of alcohol. And Chiefs said that the former Bafana keeper will be enrolled in certain programs. During his absence, he will be expected to attend and actively participate in programs designed to support his personal growth and development with support from the club. And these programs are specifically aimed at helping him address challenges and issues that he's currently facing while promoting a positive team culture. So they're trying to help him through it all. And after he's done with this, they say he will be back in club activities. In the meantime, Mamelodi Sundowns are yet to drop a point in the DStv Premiership this season. They recorded 10 wins in 10 games. So now the question is, can Mamelodi Sundowns finish the season unbeaten, something that the league have never seen? Mokoena says that they're very bad losers and they will keep on fighting to protect their unbeaten run.
The only problem with getting it off your back is that you've got to lose. And we are very bad losers. I said to them, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. So we are bad losers and we don't want to open that door. It keeps knocking. Every match we start at 0-0, defeat is knocking on the door. If you open it, it will come in, but defeat is like that. You know that friend that you have that when you open the door, it gets comfortable and then it calls the other friend and then the other friend and then the other friend, and eventually you've got everyone has taken over your house. So we don't operate in that space. We've got an incredible group of players with an incredible mentality, and I'm very proud of them. They are an amazing group, and they deserve everything that they get. In fact, even more.
Moving on to rugby news, Springbok Sevens prop Christy Grobler has been ruled out of the HSBC Sevens Cape Town this weekend after sustaining an ankle injury. Grobler picked up the injury at last weekend's Emirates Dubai Sevens, won by the Bliss Box for a fifth consecutive and 11th time overall. He underwent a scan in Cape Town after the team arrived back from Dubai, which revealed that he's unfit to play on Saturday or Sunday. Then in netball, the Netball Proteas are all set to make a strong impression in the second test against the England Roses in Nottingham on Saturday night at 7 p.m. after a 54-51 loss in their first test in Manchester on Tuesday. Proteas assistant coach Dumisani Chauke says that she's quite she has a lot of pride in the commendable effort displayed by young players against a formidable netball powerhouse. She maintains optimism regarding the Proteas' potential to stage a comeback in the second test and anticipates a significant upswing in performance from the Proteas come Saturday.
Definitely not the start that we wanted, but the finish that we wanted gave us an opportunity as well to gauge ourselves against the Netball World Cup silver medalists. They also did have quite a few youngsters on the court on their side, and we were also fortunate enough to be able to give some of our youngsters opportunity to take court, and we're quite proud of what they delivered. The future looks bright, but there's still just certain things that we need to get back to the drawing board on, especially when you look at the turnovers and also making use of the ball when we do have it in our hands.
In tennis, two-time champion Rafa Nadal has been included in the entry list for the Australian Open after nearly a year out with injury, while Nick Kyrgios looks set to miss the tournament in January. Nadal has been out of action since injury, his hip at the last Australian Open. The former world number one recently confirmed that he would make his return at January's Brisbane International. Then Australian Kyrgios has had an injury-blighted 2023, missing all four majors. The 28-year-old struggled with his wrist, knee and foot injuries and said last month that the stars would need to align for him to be fit for the first major of the year. In theory, he could still be awarded a wild card, but we'll wait and see with regards to that. Then in terms of defending champion and world number one Novak Djokovic, he'll return as he bids for a record-extending 11th men's Australian Open title and a 25th Grand Slam win overall. Ending things off with cricket, rain washed out the second day of play without a ball being bowled in the second test between Bangladesh and New Zealand. Match officials called an end to the day with the weather showing no signs of improvement. 15 wickets fell on the first day, with the tourists trailing by 117 after being held to a 55 for 5 at stumps. Bangladesh opted to bat first and were all out for 172 runs in their first innings. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
It's the celebration of the century, and you're invited. We've already given away almost 3 million rand with 56 daily vouchers won. Buy a new Ford before 31 December and you could win a 50,000 rand voucher or the grand prize of us paying for your new Ford. Visit your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply. Sekhukhune United target a win in their own backyard against Stade Malien FC. Meanwhile, the Malian side refused to travel back home empty-handed. This is the CAF Confederation Cup Group D clash. Catch Sekhukhune United versus Stade Malien FC on Sunday 10 December at 8:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Let's take your calls on 086 000 2032. You can also drop me a voice note on 0614 104 107 and X at Aldrin Sampear, and comments on our Facebook as well as our YouTube page. Coming up in the next short while, we'll be in conversation with Advocate Khahudi Murota, who is the CEO of the Black Forum South Africa. They have opened or plan on opening a case against the police in Sharpeville, and this is after the police raided Club La Porrique This is in the Vaal. The club was raided and the police were demanding to see the operating license for the club as well as the liquor license, which they were shown, and then they said that no, it's not authentic, confiscated alcohol, and the alcohol was then taken by the police. And eventually, when the police were then shown, or rather the liquor board, the Gauteng Liquor Board intervened and confirmed that actually the club does have an operating license to sell alcohol, then the alcohol was handed back to them, back to the club management. However, though, they found half of the stock because apparently the police were sharing the stock amongst themselves. So we're trying to get a hold of the police on this as well. And then at 10 to 4, we speak to Martin Kingston, chairman of Business for South Africa. And this is after the NCOP passed the NHI bill, and lots of reaction to that story. They are saying that they will be writing to the president and petition the president to send the NHI bill back to parliament because they believe it is unconstitutional. That conversation coming up at 10 to 4.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Afternoon, Aldrin. When it comes to intervening in people's fights, I would advise only intervene in people that you know they will respond positively or somehow. Don't go with damugeling people's fight. You'll end up being a victim there. And I know from experience, I helped a lady with the fighting boyfriend. We pinned him down, and obviously it got a little bit rough. Then the following morning, they were on my flat door with the police, and I was almost arrested for assaulting, and she was his witness that I kicked him. Yes, I kind of like nudged him with my shoe, but it can turn bad. And luckily the neighbors were watching when I was helping her. But
Yeah.
I almost ended up in jail for assault. Savage.
Jeez, and she was going to testify against you. Okay, let's go to Vuyo, who's joining us from Europe. Good afternoon, Vuyo.
Hi, Puti.
Unjani? Good.
I would say safe not to intervene, really, because most of the cases, they always go to you, and then you die, you leave your family behind. Call the police. But you know the problem with all this is one. I think the Western culture and the society put too much pressure on women because people, they'll give bad names that, I mean, if you don't have a man in a certain age, if you don't have children at a certain age, and if you don't get married. And all these pressures, women, they just want to please everybody, and they tend to stick in a relationship like this. I mean, that man, he's got, I don't know how many kids that he's got with this woman. That guy didn't start it yesterday to beat her up, but she was in a relationship, not moving out. And then you go to like countries like Norway. Norway, they don't know what about men. Every woman wants to study. And that's why they've got a small population there, because men, it's at the bottom of the list. Everybody wants to be on the top of the range, qualification-wise. You come here at home, everybody wants to get married. They're desperate women. They do everything to be in a relationship. It's something not right, man, with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to pass judgment on anyone who wants to be in a relationship. I think that love is beautiful, and it's beautiful to be in a relationship. But I'm obviously speaking from a very biased point of view here because I'm in a relationship. But then the point around staying in a relationship when the relationship is clearly toxic and unhealthy. Hi, Vuyo. Okay, we seem to have lost Vuyo there. But yeah, let's take your voice note, 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. What do you do when you see a couple fighting or when you hear your neighbors fighting? Do you intervene? And what sort of intervention do you give? And this is based on the story that we were speaking about earlier on, a man in Limpopo who was stabbed after trying to intervene when a friend and the friends, when a friend rather, two friends were stabbed by one of the friend's husband in front of the children, and the man tried to intervene, and he was also stabbed in the process. So what do you do? 0614-104-107.
The main problem is that you will be expected to come up with a direct evidence. I mean, a direct evidence. So therefore, you are going to be expected to testify in court. So as a result, you are of course in trouble. So intervening also has got a problem itself, because we are expected to testify in court. You are expected to say, okay, I was the eyewitness, so therefore this is exactly what had happened. Albert here.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
14 minutes now before 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Advocate Khagudi Morota, who is the CEO of the Black Forum South Africa. They visited the family of Aleta Litaba and the business establishment Club La Piroc, following the inhumane treatment that they've suffered at the hands of members of the police. So last month, a Sergeant Samuel Bokedi, accompanied by 20 other members of the police representing SAPS, raided the establishment without a warrant and gave instruction that the entire supply of alcohol that was available on the premises be seized by his members. And later on, Advocate Moroto, we hear that once the Gauteng Liquor Board intervened and showed that actually the club does have a license to operate and sell alcohol, they found only half of the alcohol that was taken by the police. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. It is a sad story in democratic South Africa. You know, in the townships where widows who have no one to provide for them, establish this kind of liquor outlets, but law enforcement agencies in the form of SAPS, they saw that as an opportunity to target them, take alcohol, share it amongst themselves. It is so shocking that when we check the CCTV footages, we see some of the female SAPS, holding some expensive alcohol, dancing for it, celebrating for that alcohol. So one honorable police official from Sharpeville police station, tipped us that, look, it was for the first time I see my colleagues who are police officials doing Ganena Gawena with the alcohol of this, female-owned establishment. Later on, there was some year-end function at that Sharpeville police station. After that year-end function, the alcohol confiscated or stolen from this poor woman who was living through a pub was consumed there by police officials. But what was even more shocking is that when Mama went to the police station to claim her alcohol, she found a lot of empty bottles at the police station, showing that they were drinking and getting drunk that alcohol at that police station. It's the first time I see something like this.
Yeah, and what was the explanation then from the police about what happened to the alcohol? The official explanation this is?
The official explanation, after Gauteng Liquor intervened and said, how could you take alcohol when this business is creating with an authentic official liquor license? They are compliant. That's when they said, okay, with an attitude, come and take that the alcohol. So when they arrived there, one policeman says, no, come with 2 buckets because that alcohol is too much. That policeman did not know that his colleagues actually have consumed that alcohol and shared it amongst themselves. When they arrived there, they found only brown bottles. There were even half a van. There were not even a half in that van. Then when we hear other police saying, no, that establishment was targeted because after they have taken the alcohol, the police here, they were making mockery of the incident, saying, yeah, today you are danger. Like the deceased husband of the lady who runs the establishment, he was, famously known as Danger. So they were laughing there, not to them, touching, so you are there, so we taught him a lesson. And also they knew that on Friday there was a gig or an event here, already advertised. So they knew that he bought alcohol for that event. So they took all of it. When they say, come take it back with an arrogance, when she arrived there, she found not even quarter of what they have stolen from her.
Wow. So tell us about the case that you've opened with the...
Yes, at Black Forum South Africa, we went to the police station with the aim of arresting those perpetrators. Take their handcuffs and handcuff them. Take their guns and push them into the cells. So, fortunately, when we arrived there, they were so cooperative. Some senior person from the district also was there. They assisted us in terms of opening the case against the perpetrators, and they said they will hand it over to IPIT to investigate it, but also they are going to effect their internal processes, disciplinary processes against the perpetrators involved in this crime.
Advocate Khahudi, thank you so much for your time. Advocate Khahudi Murota, who is the CEO of the Black Forum South Africa. Listening into the conversation is Captain Fikile Funda, who is from the Sidibeng SAPS district. Captain Funda, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. You just heard what Advocate Murota had to say there. But tell us about your own investigation and what you have been able to establish so far.
Good afternoon. This is Captain Fikile Funda from Sidibeng district. I can confirm that a case of theft has been opened with Shavel SAPS, and the case will be officially handed to the IPID for investigation.
Are you able to speak, Captain, at all to the allegation that the alcohol that was confiscated was actually consumed by the police officers?
Like I said, the allegations concerning the case will be investigated by IP. So they will be better placed to comment on it.
Okay. Are the police officers still at work?
So I can confirm to you that the case of theft has been opened for investigation and will be handed over to IPIT. So IPIT will be better placed to answer all the questions that you're asking.
Sure, no, but I'm asking about SAPS's own internal processes. It is not IPIT that suspends the police officers, but I'm asking about SAPS's internal processes. Have you suspended any of the police officers?
Okay, we've got something like an hour that a case has been opened.
Okay.
The documentation must go through the processes so that all the processes must take place.
Okay. Captain Funda, are you able to tell us ordinarily what happens when police suspect that an establishment is operating unlawfully and doesn't have the required documentation? And when the alcohol or any assets are confiscated, is there an inventory that is compiled?
Definitely, we do have an inventory that is compiled, which is called the SP13.
Okay. And in this particular case, when it comes to a suspicion that the operations of a company, or rather in this particular case a club, is that they're operating unlawfully, what is it that the police are looking for, and how can the police confirm that the license is actually authenticated?
You see, according to the merits of the case, that will depend if the police officers are operating. And whatever they find will guide them as to whether we close the place or we go on. That will be determined by whatever outcome that they find.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in this particular case, it was the Gauteng Liquor Board that actually had to intervene and show that actually this operation does have the license to sell alcohol, even though the police officers were shown the certificates.
Can I refer you to IPIT for that question?
No, but I'm asking also, Captain Funda, because we also have listeners who listen to the radio station, who also have establishment where they sell alcohol, and maybe you'll be able to educate them about what it is that they can do when police suspect that they have an operating license which is fraudulent, but in actual case the license is authentic.
I do understand what you're telling the listeners that are listening.
Mm-hmm.
liquor board is one that can educate people about the license is authentic and the license that is not. In this case, we are talking about a case that has been opened to us at Sharville SAPS and will be transferred to IPID. And whoever that is having a license and is not sure what to do, I think the liquor board is better placed to advise people on what to do.
Sorry, Captain, I lost you there for a second.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, with us, we've got a case that has been opened at Sharville SAPS, which is a case of theft, which is going to be handed over to IPID. In terms of listeners that want to know if their licenses are authentic or not, and they need an explanation on this, people that are issuing licenses are the liquor board, which are better placed to can do that kind of explanation.
No, the question is, how can they prove to the police that the license is actually authentic? Because in this particular case, the establishment said the license is authentic and the police said it's not. And that's the reason why they confiscated the alcohol. So I'm asking then from your side, perhaps with your own experience, when it comes to cases of this nature, how can I, as a person who owns an establishment that sells alcohol, prove to the police that actually the license that I have is authentic?
The IPID will be able to explain to you what must have happened, what must not have happened.
But doesn't the SAPS have their own code of conduct?
We do have the code of conduct.
Sure. So what does the code of conduct says when it comes to enforcing the law?
The code of conduct is saying a police officer must behave within the prescript of the law, which is your conduct, your code of conduct.
Okay, Captain Figile Funda, thank you so much for your time. That is the spokesperson for the Citybang SAPS district. I wonder, anyone who owns an establishment that sells alcohol, have you ever come across an incident where you have alcohol that you are selling being confiscated by the police, even though you have the necessary documents required to prove to the police that actually you have the right and the license to be selling and be in possession of that particular alcohol? 0614 104 107. And you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
The massive evening to walk on the purple carpet has arrived. The queens of the beautiful game, coaches and administrators are recognized for their excellence on and off the pitch. Celebrating the sheroes of football. Experience the Hollywood Bet Super League Awards this Saturday, 9 December at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies invites interested individuals and stakeholders to submit written comments on the SABC bill. The bill seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999 to regulate the continued existence of the SABC, to provide its governance, to amend the ICASA Act of 2000 and the Electronic Communications Act of 2005. For more information, contact the Portfolio Committee of Communications and Digital Technologies by emailing sabcbill@parliament.gov.za, directed to Hanjiera Sali. The award-winning SAFM Playwriting Competition is back.
Piece of good news for writers out there.
SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound.
Dr. Jerry Mufokeng Wamaketa is head judge of the competition.
And you ask the question, who? And I want to say everybody, young, old, black, white.
For a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
It's 4 o'clock and it is time for the news with Dineo Mutaung. Good afternoon, Dineo.
independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thank you, Aldrin. Top stories. Mavuso Msimang lambas Ramaphosa's leadership and consumer confidence dips. Good afternoon. ANC struggle veteran Mavuso Msimang says, like many South Africans, he had hope when President Cyril Ramaphosa took over from his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, in 2018. He describes the Zuma tenure as the most disastrous administration ever in the history of ANC governance. But speaking to the SABC after the termination of his membership from the governing party, the 82-year-old former deputy president of the ANC Veterans League says the Ramaphosa leadership lost the initiative when it started to tolerate corruption and surround itself with what he calls shady characters.
The new dawn is yet to come. The public has not seen the dawn. There are good steps that have been taken, but whatever you do is tied to an objective that you agreed. I want by a certain time for the GDP to be at 3.5%, and I'll get it there by doing ABCD. I mean, you talk about the new dawn when we have no lights because ESCOM is not functioning. If I was in charge, I would take the blame for these things happening because I would want to find out from my charges, why are we about to get a water crisis? What new thing has arisen that would have prevented a proper process that would ensure there's good maintenance of systems?
Moving to the Free State, Welcome residents have lamented their living conditions, saying there is sewage running through their communities. They addressed President Cyril Ramaphosa and various ministers and officials during the District Development Model Presidential Imbizo in the area. They say there's no service delivery and the sewage was only cleared this week in preparation for the president's visit.
I remember Mandela's words very well when he said, "A better life for all." There's no better life in our locations. We have sewage right in front of a school. They only started removing the sewage this week. I am surprised that it's only when they announce that the president is coming that the sewer gets unblocked.
In the Western Cape, a 21-year-old woman has drowned at Strandfontein Beach in the Cape Town after she was caught in a rip current while swimming with a friend. Spokesperson for the National Sea Rescue Institute, Craig Limbanon, said they were alerted about a drowning in progress at Strandfontein Beach near the tidal pool. Limbanon says the City of Cape Town's law enforcement marine officers were first on the scene.
A law enforcement marine senior inspector launched into the surf where he reached the casualty, finding her lifeless in the water. He brought her to the shore where he was assisted by two fellow law enforcement marine officers to recover the female onto the shore, where they initiated cardiopulmonary resuscitation efforts. After all efforts to resuscitate the female were exhausted, sadly, she was declared deceased.
In economic news, consumer confidence has hit its lowest festive season reading in more than 2 decades. The FNB BER consumer confidence fell to 17 points in the fourth quarter, the worst fourth quarter reading in 23 years. Consumers are being pressured by the rising cost of living and higher borrowing costs. Mpumelelo Maphalala reports.
The slight deterioration in the Consumer Confidence Index during the fourth quarter of 2023 can be ascribed to a relapse in the Economic Outlook sub-index. Having rebounded from -37 to -22 in the third quarter, the Economic Outlook sub-index slipped back down to -28 in the fourth quarter. Nevertheless, most consumers still feel that the present is not the right time to purchase big-ticket durable goods items. This suggests that consumers will keep tight control over their purse strings during the holiday shopping season, which would worry retailers of expensive luxury goods in particular.
And lastly, staying with economic matters, the French Chamber of Commerce Director Sébastien Dupleix says there are a multitude of challenges that South Africa is facing, but it is encouraging that government is working on resolving these issues. Dupleix says there's still more investment in the pipeline. He says sectors such as retail, energy and logistics stand to benefit.
Yes, there are challenges for electricity, but there are also plans that the government is putting or explained, and there is, from what we think and what we are convinced will happen, a 2 years plan to resolve the energy crisis. We think that in the next 2 years, if the current plan is put in action, we should not have load sheddings anymore. Today it is a challenge because when you run a factory, you need to buy generators. You need to use a lot of fuel. It's additional expenses. Or you need to invest in solar panel. And these investments were not planned.
Recapping the top story this hour, ANC struggle veteran Mavuso Msimang says, like many South Africans, he had hope when President Cyril Ramaphosa took over from his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, in 2018. Headlines at 4:30. For SAFM News, I am Dinoma Daung.
And coming up in your sports this hour, SA Under-19 captain cleared after pro-Israel remarks. Sebeng backs middle distance runners to make the podium at the Olympics, and Raducanu to make comeback in Auckland in January. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, we're tracking delays on the Mike 1 today from Houghton through to about Marlborough Drive on your way out of Joburg. More delays between Allendale Road and the New Road exit. Get past New Road, it opens up quite nicely through to Pretoria. Bit of traffic in Pretoria around the Dustboard Tunnel, both directions. So that would point to an obstruction in the tunnel area. Now, the N3 to Durban is closed. Closed from Cato Ridge due to a crash down before you get to Inchunga. Now, that is a big backlog. This is very important. If you're leaving Pietermaritzburg just at the moment, there is a big backlog from Linfield Park down through Umlust Road, through Camperdown, and down to Cato Ridge where you are taken off. So if you know the alternative route, get onto that as quick as you can. Expect that to be very busy though, but it might get you through a little bit quicker than it will just sitting onto that closure on the N3 at Cato Ridge. The other option is to travel later. Let us tell you it's open and then maybe sit out to avoid it. But at this stage, N3 Durban bound completely closed. Also a crash on Durban's N2 south between Umhlanga and Kwamashu. That's quite a heavy delay from the Sibaya exit. Cape Town, plenty of traffic around the beaches again, particularly Atlantic Seaboard, Bantry Bay, Clifton and Camps Bay, all very busy. The main road's got a lot of traffic between Fishhook and Muizenberg, and truck crash recovery continues just north of Pitt Retief on the N2. Factor in some queue time to get through that both directions. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Various African outfits will display a great brand of cricket this festive season. Kenya, Ghana and Cameroon will play their hearts out in the East-West qualifier of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. They will all endeavour to clinch one of 4 remaining spots. This is the journey to the finals of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. Witness the thrilling action from 5 to 10 December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
There is a piece of paradise for everyone in South Africa. You can get lost in the clear night sky of the desert, hike up to majestic mountains and waterfalls, explore the fun and vibey outdoor events and festivities, feast on perfect seafood on a tranquil coast, or just cruise on a game drive witnessing the Big Five. Whatever your taste, opportunities await. SA Tourism, inspiring new ways.
The 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children campaign. This year, be an activist. Play your part. Do not protect abusers. Report them. Hashtag no to GBVF. SAFM, leading the conversation. The award-winning SAFM playwriting competition is back.
I remember a time when my grandmother, she would make sure that she never missed that story.
SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound.
I mean, I remember Pipito, she remember all of those. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was fiction.
The theater of the mind. And to create a 1-hour radio play in English, get writing now and submit your play before the 22nd of January 2024. For more information, visit safm.co.za. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4.
10 past 4. Ba, ba.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 4:10, and coming up on the show in this hour. So after the conversation that we had with the Dr. Nthabiseng Moliko, economist at the Stellenbosch Business School, where we're speaking about the money that's being allocated to fight GBV rather, and the point that she made was that the money is not enough. We then had a sit down with the team and asked the question about if that over, I think, 1.6 billion, if I'm not mistaken, is not enough. Are we able to quantify, though, the economic impact of gender-based violence? What is the economic impact of gender-based violence? And apparently, actually, you can quantify it. So Dr. Nthabiseng Moliko will be joining us in the next short while to speak to us about the impact that gender-based violence has on the economy. And then at 4:20, we speak to Dr. Karen Bagg, who is a newly elected chair of the South African Committee of Health Sciences Deans, and they are making a call to the Minister of Finance not to cut the budget of healthcare institutions. This is including clinics as well as hospitals. So we'll have that conversation in the next short while. And then at 4:45, as I've indicated, that we are introducing a new feature, calling it Tourism Thursdays, with various tourism stakeholders across the country speaking about some of the attractions and perhaps also looking at some of the concerns that have been raised by some tourism stakeholders. So we will be speaking to Baba, head of the destination marketing at Gauteng Tourism, who will be joining us at 4:45 to speak about some of the tourist attractions that are here in the province of Gold. 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and the SAFM listeners. Aldrin, I want to share with you a story. I was in an abusive relationship with a doctor. This doctor had kids and I didn't have kids, so he'll come home drunk every day, almost every day, and beat the hell out of me and say I'm not taking care of his kids well. I got so tired of the abuse until one day my Bible fell. When I picked it up, it opened on a Bible verse that says, love is patient, love is kind, love knows no anger. You know, that Bible verse motivated me. One day I packed everything, and the day when I was walking out of the door, he came home sober. Aldrin, I don't want to lie to you, the beatings, the pain, my body was in so much pain, but you know what? That Bible verse motivated me to walk out, and I walked out and I never looked back. I never looked back, and I'm doing just fine without him.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us, and so sorry for your experience as well.
Hey, Aldrin, you're reminding me of next week. You know, I'm staying in the apartment. You know, I'm a doctor by profession. One of our yard mate just collapsed, and then they've called me to come and resuscitate. And upon my arrival, I found, like, you know, she collapsed due to stress-related. You know, it's that season where we all have the financial problem at home, and then I tried to resuscitate, and then she woke up, and then they will call the ambulance to come and assist, and then they returned the ambulance back. They said no, they will be fine. And then even today, I didn't even receive a thank you from the husband. That thing, bruh, the mix of emotion, I don't think it's wise to assist. Rather call the police or EMS. Clap.
#SAFMBTH.
It's 14 minutes after 4 o'clock. So as 16 days of activism against women and children draw to a close, we pay close attention to how the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide is impacting the local economy. According to a report by the University of Johannesburg and the Africa Shared Value Initiative, as well as KPMG, released back in 2021, the financial implications of gender-based violence and femicide cost up to 36 billion rand per year. To tell us more about what indicators and segments of society are considered, we are joined by Dr. Nthabiseng Moliko, who is an economist at the Stellenbosch Business School. Dr. Moliko, once again, thank you so much for joining us again.
Very good afternoon, Aldrin, and your listeners. Thanks for having me.
So, what indicators do we look at when it comes to quantifying the impact that gender-based violence has on the economy?
Well, I think there's a direct impact in terms of the loss of earnings that you measure. People are not at work, there's downtime, there's loss of revenue. I think that the opportunity cost as well, where people ought to be economically active and participating in the growth of the company or the workforce where they are, there's value of output lost because of that. And I think that the general decline in economic activity due to the stresses, so there's a cost in terms of now the social welfare aspect, the increased cost in terms of the justice cluster having to take care of these cases. They, of course, have a multiply effect in the justice cluster and a reallocation of revenue. So we know that, for an example, the South African Police Service have an allocation in this current budget of around 112 billion. A percentage of that will go not just to visible policing, but also to deal with domestic violence, but also to provide visible policing in response to the GBVF scourge. So there are reallocations that must happen from a budgetary perspective. There are also reallocations for the care. So Department of Social Development will also allocate from their expenditure some kind of support to the NGOs that they fund and finance. So holistically, you can actually measure the kind of cost that gender-based violence and femicide cost the economy. The estimates are around 2% of GDP. So if you approximate in dollars, our GDP is around $380 billion, and a percentage point of that is around 3 to 4 billion US dollars. So these are conservative estimates, and you can imagine the multiply effect on families that you cannot value on the social, emotional, and psychological impact.
Geez, 2%, that's really a lot of money, because if you think about, for instance, the Reserve Bank governor speaking about how the economy would have grown by at least 2% had Eskom been operating optimally. And then you think about it and link it to, for instance, what you're speaking about now, about the impact of gender-based violence on the economy. I wonder then, when it comes to the type of interventions that are required, and I know that I'm speaking here from an economic perspective, but what is then required?
Oh, well, I think the most successful interventions are those that prevent. So if you allocate resources and financial resources, not just to policymakers to create bills, to catch the perpetrators, which are very necessary. So I think the consequences of violence need to be dealt with and addressed. So that's the justice cluster. So we see the allocation in the budget accordingly for that. But I think that where we actually miss the point, and I think where we need to try to reduce the prevalence of GBVF, is where we allocate budgets to teach young kids what is consent, to teach children. I think they've done it in East African countries, and this has had a direct impact on not just HIV/AIDS rates, but also on sexual offenses, rape cases. People need to be taught what is consent, because clearly there is a crisis when you have over 10,500 rapes in a quarter in South Africa, reported by the Minister of Finance. I think the second aspect is to teach and to ensure that there's counseling for not just our perpetrators, but for victims. So I think money has to be allocated to that because of the harm caused to the person, because of the effect and the impact on the person's soul and their emotions. I think that there has to be a healing process, because what is not dealt with, it multiplies in the next generation. And what is not dealt with, particularly from the perpetrators, they will then continue to address their emotional tensions by beating up people, by beating up their partners, their children, and beside the multiply effect and implication of that is, of course, the trauma that we see, the cases that are reported, the statistics that we see. So I think that we have to have a really, I'd say, a large-scale intervention around the person and the healing of the person, the dealing of the trauma. And I think that requires counseling, that requires an efficacy in terms of monitoring the impact and availing.
Hey, Aldrin, you're reminding me of next week. I'm staying in the apartment,
Hello?
Apologies for that. It's a voice note just that started playing there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just availing with sources that measure the economic and also the social impact of these type of things. So we have to prioritize. I think there is. I know that the budget constraints are there.
Yeah.
With austerity, but I think that we have to be focused and look at.
Dr. Muliko, is there though something that needs to be said about teaching conflict management from a very young age and how to deal with that? Because we know once we get into the business space and once you are employed, there would be some sessions that take place even during induction where they speak about how to deal with conflict within the workplace, but how to deal with conflict within social settings.
Yes. So I think South Africans need to deal with pain. South Africans need to know how to deal with suffering. I think we somehow are not well equipped to deal with disappointment. We're not well equipped to deal with even rejection. I'm not a psychologist at all, and I think those who are within the social work and within the health, the mental health space will be more equipped to and versed to speak on the psychosocial aspects. But the issue of it seems that the type of psychosocial problems that our society has is not being dealt with adequately. We are not necessarily dealing with the kind of pain and suffering that are not seen, so they're not visible. So it's easy to see a wound that someone has. If you have a car accident, we can see the bleeding, right? If you have a broken bone, you can see that pain. But the emotional pain, the detachment, the violence that people have grown up under, the anger, all of these things, I think that the dysfunction is coming out in the way in which we deal with each other, the lack of humanity, the amount of murders that we are seeing, the ease with which South Africans are able to kill one another is almost like we're in a war zone. And I think it's been cited that these crime statistics are startling because we hear them every quarter. But the impairment, the loss of life, we are almost numb. And I think that it speaks to a society that needs care, speaks to a society that needs healing and is under a great deal of pain and suffering. And I think we do need some kind of direct intervention. And I think that's where faith-based organizations come in, NGOs, social work, the Department of Social Development. But I think it has to be very deliberate. I think at a schooling level, I think at a family level, and I think that it cannot be simply a laissez-faire thing, because what we're seeing now, the rate of murders, the rate of I heard the clip that you played just before. Also, if South Africans can be reminded of the CTUT young woman who was stabbed in full view of other students by we thought it was another student at the time, and then you find out it's the husband. The kind of violence and trauma, what kind of society sees that kind of thing, and we see the kind of violence that is normal in our society. I think there's something wrong. And I think this is where we need to intervene.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ntabiseng Moleko, who is an economist at the Stellenbosch Business School.
Eintracht Frankfurt plans to have things their way when they clash with the giants of German football Bayern München. They believe a win is more exciting on home ground, while the Bavarians are gunning for strictly 3 points to settle at the top of the table. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the superb contest between Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern München on Saturday 9 December at 3 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Stand a chance to win your Christmas wishlist from Dis-Chem this festive season. Download the Dis-Chem app, create your wishlist, and you could be one of 100 people to win your wishlist back in Dis-Chem benefit rewards up to the value of 5,000 Rand. Enter before 15 December for a chance to see your wishes come true. Shop and win with Dis-Chem pharmacies. Better health starts here.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
It's 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Dr. Karen Begg, who is a newly elected chair of the South African Committee of Health Sciences Deans. So the committee have made a call to the National Treasury to protect the healthcare system and not to institute budget cuts. If you may recall, the Finance Minister, Inoko Tongwana, announced the budget cuts during his medium-term budget policy statement last month. And let's now speak to Dr. Karen Begg. Dr. Begg, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
Have you been able to track, though, or trace at least the impact that the so-called budget cuts have had? Because a conversation that we had, I think, a couple of months ago with some professionals in the health sector, they said that year on year there's actually been a decline in the money that has been allocated to health service.
Correct. So certainly year on year, medical inflation, healthcare inflation is often higher than the budgetary increases, inflationary increases over time. But remember that there's a specific constraints that have been emanated since the 31st of August letter from National Treasury around significant budget cuts. And these are in the form of billions and trillions of rands. These are not just lesser increases than inflation. These are significant budget cuts that will impact across the entire government. And it's important for us as a country to recognize the economic austerity situation that we face ourselves with. But what we're calling for is a really careful and considerate application of these constraints, fiscal constraints, in the healthcare system, given just how vulnerable the healthcare system is. And particularly from our perspective as health sciences deans, is that as we produce health professionals, already we're seeing National Department of Health issued a media statement earlier in the week indicating that over 900 newly qualified professionals that we're literally just graduating now have not been placed for employment next year, which means that they sit at home because they can't practice. So they're legally cannot practice unless they're in internship positions, if they've qualified as doctors, or if they're in community service positions, if they've qualified in other health professionals such as physios, occupational therapists, audiologists, speech-language pathologists, biokineticists, etc., etc. So over 900 have not yet been placed.
Mm-hmm. So considering the growing population, the poorly maintained infrastructure, what do you think the impact of these budget cuts will have on the provision of providing healthcare services to South Africans, considering especially the poor?
So we're very concerned that it contributes to some of the systemic failures in our broader healthcare system across the country, and certainly will impact on compromising quality of care, and particularly always then disproportionately affects the well-being of women and children, and especially those in rural areas. So that is always a concern. I think for us in particular, our concern is that short-term cuts can have significant long-term effects. So as we start to cut, and particularly if we start cutting in anything related to training, it's very difficult to reverse those impacts later, and to be able to make sure that we have sufficient health professionals for our country in 10 to 20 years' time. So our lead time in training health professionals is generally from recruitment to exiting is a good 5 to 6 to 8 years, depending on the type of health professional. But any cuts today have impacts long term in the future.
The NCOP passed the NHI bill. Do you think that could be the answer? The president, it's now in the president's in-tray, just waiting to see whether the president will assent to it or send it back to Parliament for reconsideration, as some have called for it. But do you think that that is the answer?
So certainly I think we're all in agreement that universal health coverage is absolutely what we're all looking for. The principles of primary healthcare approach and universal health coverage are without question. The mechanism through which that is delivered, which the NHI bill articulates, some aspects remain to be tested, but there are certainly some of those areas that there are still concerns around, but we are very committed to working together with the National Department of Health and provincial departments of health in getting it to the point that we strengthen our healthcare system rather than detract and diminish our healthcare system.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Karen Bagg, newly elected chair of the South African Committee of Health Sciences Deans. But later on, we'll be in conversation with Martin Kingston, the chairman of Business for South Africa. They've written to the president and want to petition him to send the NHI bill back to Parliament. Also, the Democratic Alliance is looking at going to the Constitutional Court to have the Constitutional Court test the constitutional validity of the NHI bill. So this is an ongoing matter, of course, when it comes to the NHI bill. And yesterday, when the NCOP, was it this week, when the NCOP voted in favor of adopting the bill, it was the Western Cape that didn't vote in favor of it. And of course, the Western Cape is being governed by the Democratic Alliance. It's 4:30. Time for the news headlines.
For the headlines at 4:30, I am Dino Motaung. Good afternoon. The South African Weather Service has issued a level 5 severe storm warning for Bloemfontein and Bethlehem as recurring systems of thunderstorms are developing in the eastern and central parts of the Free State. In other news, the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of Southern Africa has threatened to take legal action against the government if the scrap metal ban continues. And ANC struggle veteran Mavuso Msimang says, like many South Africans, he had hope when President Cyril Ramaphosa took over from his predecessor Jacob Zuma in 2018. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Mudupi Makalemele.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just on that weather alert, we have seen a hailstorm moving along the N8, just on the eastern side of Bloemfontein, Mandela View area. So drive carefully if it's hailing where you are. It has been lying on the road surface and making conditions quite slippery. Joburg, load shedding in the four-ways there until 6 p.m. So the N1 South to get off at Winnie Mandela. There's quite a heavy backlog from Buccleuch. Looks like some load shedding in the Paulshof and Ravoni areas as well. Malabongwe drivers under pressure between Kaya Sam and North Riding. Both ways, very slow going. N1 up through Midrand. Not too bad this afternoon. If you're driving into Pretoria on the N4, the Emalatheni Highway, crash at the N1, so that's pushing traffic back through Vartameyer Street. When we last crossed and spoke, we talked about a crash blocking the N3 at Cato Ridge on your way to Durban. That closure has been lifted, but there is a big backlog of traffic to clear through from the Linfield Park area. And Cape Town, if you're outbound on the N1 Service Road approaching the N7, there's a left lane closure for some road work, so expect some extra delays there. And the beaches are busy, particularly South Peninsula, Main Road all jammed through Cork Bay and through Muizenberg. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Domin Khapele.
Righty, in your sports this hour, SA Under-19 captain David Tiga was cleared of contradicting Cricket South Africa and the Central Gauteng Lions codes of conduct by an independent inquiry after complaints of hate speech. The inquiry found Tiga had not contravened Clause 152 of CSA's Rules and Code of Conduct that governs unbecoming conduct, which could bring them, CSA, or the game of cricket into disrepute. A complaint lodged by the Palestine Solidarity Alliance against the 18-year-old, who was also named the Lions Under-19 team for the Kaya Majola week, led to the inquiry. Tiga's remarks were carried in the South African Jewish Report, and since the start of the war, more than 15,000 Palestinians have been killed. In the meantime, Ireland will hope for a better showing in Zimbabwe as they face the hosts in 6 white ball games than their efforts in the country in June, when they toiled during the World Cup qualifiers. 2 further T20 contests will take place at the Harare Sports Club on Saturday and Sunday, before 3 one-day games at the same venue on the 13th, 15th and 17th of December. In athletics, South Africa's athletics coach Samuel Sebeng says that he's quite confident that middle distance runners will secure a podium finish at the upcoming 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. The games are set to get under in the capital city of France from the 26th of July to the 11th of August next year. Athletics South South Africa has fallen short of clinching medals in 4 consecutive championships, including the World Championships in Doha back in 2019, then in 2021 and 2023 in Budapest, as well as the preceding Olympic Games in Tokyo. In rugby, assistant coach Norman Laker says that the Stormers will pay special attention to Leicester Tigers duo Andre Pollard and Jasper Visser when the teams clash on Sunday. The Stormers approach this weekend's Champions Cup encounter against Leicester with caution, acknowledging the prowess of the World Cup winning Springboks. Pollard's come-head and exceptional kicking game makes him a formidable force in steering English's outfit's game plan, and Visser adds an intriguing layer to the match, setting the stage for a potential showdown with fellow Bok row Brusa Evan Ruiz. Then in tennis, Britain's Emma Raducanu will make a comeback to the tennis tour in Auckland in the first week of January. The 2021 US Open champion has been out of action since April and has fallen to 296 in the world rankings. She's been awarded a wild card into the ASB Classic with the US Open champion Coco Gauff and former world number 1 Caroline Wozniacki also in the lineup. The women's tournament at the Auckland Classic takes place from the 1st to the 7th of January. The Australian Open, which is the first Grand Slam of the season, begins on the 14th of Jan. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. More on other sports in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Khapele.
The massive evening to walk on the purple carpet has arrived. The queens of the beautiful game, coaches and administrators are recognized for their excellence on and off the pitch. Celebrating the sheroes of football. Experience the Hollywood Bet Super League Awards this Saturday, 9 December at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a market update with Maukwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Maukwe Fund Managers. Maukwe, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. So let's look at African Rainbow Capital and also Nedbank's update.
Afternoon to you, Aldrin, and to the listener. Starting with African Rainbow. Aldrin, despite the known economic challenges, some of their investments remained resilient. Looking at the rain, they saw an increase when it comes to conversion of existing customers from legacy products to new ones, and also managed to acquire new clients. And they saw some production decrease at their Elandsfontein mine. That's due to localized flooding. And then Oba home loans continue to drive higher daily intake, conversion rates, registration, and the average bond size. And Time Bank now serves over 8 million customers since its launch in April 2019, with 23 million monthly transactions. And the guys are about to finalize raising more money. And Go Solar, they've seen the rollout of solar installations slowing, and that is a reflection of wider industry trends and also reduced load shedding. And the share price was up 2.7%, and Nedbank share price was down 3%. The guys, they expect a lower GDP growth compared to 2022. That is, they expect a growth of 0.5% versus the 1.9% we saw in 2022, and strong net interest income, and that is the growth. The growth will be in the mid-teens, and a moderate non-interest revenue growth. Credit loss ratio improved, and their return on equity increased from 14.2% to 15%. And when you look into their banking loan and advances growth for both corporate and investment banking, and also for retail and business banking, that slowed.
And let's look at local and international market developments.
Argentina exports surprised us on the upside in November, while imports fell slightly, and the Baltic Dry Index, which is a bellwether gauge of global trade, climbed to a 3-year high in November. November, supported by improved demand for industrial commodities, particularly from China. And most investors think that inflation has been conquered and there's a lot at stake if we are wrong. And tomorrow we're getting the mother of all reports, that is the US job number, and expectations are a moderate growth, and the dollar dipped ahead of those numbers, hence the rand is stronger. And locally, our Q4 consumer confidence fell to -17 from -16, and that's a potential blow to retailers who traditionally count on the holiday shopping season to boost the sales. And our economy, remember, is 61% driven by consumer demand. And our Q3 current account shortfall narrowed as trade surplus managed to widen. And it's worth noting that Bitcoin has jumped more than 165% so far this year. It's now around 829,000 rands. And oil prices reclaimed some ground after tumbling to a 6-month low. But traders remained concerned, and that's about the sluggish demand coming out of the US and China. Brent crude is up 1.3% at $75 a barrel, and the yellow metal has been cautioned by a weaker dollar and lower yields. We see gold is up 0.3% at 2,031. Platinum is up 2.8% at 912. The DAX, just like the CAC, down 0.1%. FTSE flat. The Dow is up 0.2%. S&P up 0.5%. The JSE is down 0.6%. With our financials down 2%, industrials down 0.5%, but our resources are up 0.4%, and the rand firmed almost 0.8%. Is now 18.82 to the US dollar, 23.65 to the pound, and 20.28 to the euro.
Thank you so much. That's Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
#SAFMBTH.
Let's take your voice notes on 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Hey, good afternoon, Aldrin. You brought the spokesperson who sounds intoxicated himself. That is why he could not answer the simple questions and trying to be politician and duck and dive the question.
Good afternoon, Indren. You're speaking with Stembiso from Mpumalanga. I'm trying to find out from the doctor that said that he resuscitated a colleague in the flat where they stayed, and then he never received any thanks from the husband of the person that he resuscitated. I'm wondering, because doctors have pleaded to save the lives of South African, and they are even saving lives of people that don't even come back to thank them, but we really appreciate them. He must not take it personal. That don't expect people to thank you all the time, but we really appreciate the job that you do. We know that you're doing a lot, but don't take it personal. Don't take it personal, please, doctor. We thank you. I thank you for saving the life of that your neighbor.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and SFM listeners. That captain, your captain you were talking to, I wonder if he was once a police officer or he even trained, because he seemed to be knowing nothing. He knows nothing about processes and procedures of how police must also behave. It's a disappointment.
Yeah.
I mean, a spokesperson must speak power to truth. and it is up to us to determine whether he's telling us the truth or not. But he must tell us the truth of exactly what has happened. This is very much disappointing.
Yeah, it's also a missed opportunity, as I said to him, that you have an entire country, well, at least we broadcast across the 9 provinces, people who are listening to the show, some of them who also own outlets that sell alcohol. What would your advice be to them? Like when they face a situation where the police are accusing them that the license, the operating license that they have is fraudulent. And he sent me to iPad. iPad? Really? Let's go to Sandile. He's joining us from KwaZulu-Natal. Good afternoon.
How's it, Aldrin?
I'm good, Sandile. How are you doing?
I'm good. I have to take off my hat to you, my brother. And being a broadcaster, you people are very patient. Some people come on the radio and they just decide to make us fools as citizens of this country. You know, a spokesperson, I don't think it's really important to make the people who are listening to him answer or her answering to be like fools. That police spokesperson just turned us as idiots, as we don't know what we are listening to. Because everything, it was better if he just had rejected the entire interview and said, no, I cannot handle this interview. You should approach IPID for the necessary information that you need. So the mere fact that he took the interview, he was supposed to give us answers.
Yeah, no, certainly. It was a bit strange, though, also that everything gets referred to iPad.
Exactly. And then on top of it, he's telling you about the liquor board. He agreed to come onto the air. He's supposed to answer. But South Africa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandile there from KwaZulu-Natal. 0614-104-107. Your ex at Aldrin Sampear. You can also drop me a comment on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page.
Hey, Aldrin, your captain there is more concerned about protecting the interest of the station. He's dodging the questions, which are basically trying to bring him to educate the nation. There was no need for him to refer to the IPID when you're looking at the issue of how to identify whether a license is valid or not. Clearly, this guy was told that he should come on air and try to have the station still looking good. But anyway, this is the police services in our country. Surely he knows something, but he's more interested in making sure that nothing goes out there.
Hi, Aldrin and the team, SAFM listeners. Yeah, Aldrin, to intervene, when a woman is assaulted, it's a tricky one. I once intervened after a boyfriend, assaulted the girlfriend very badly. So I intervened, restrained the guy. Obviously, I was angry. And, I had to brush the guy a little bit. But to my surprise, the girlfriend then started swearing at me and wanted to assault me, So it's a tricky one. So you're not sure whether you should intervene or not. But for me personally, I would always intervene. I really don't believe that women, should be abused in any way whatsoever. Yeah, so I will intervene even though I may be insulted or put myself at risk. Thanks, Aldrin. Rudolph from Witbank, Mpumalanga.
Rand Water is concerned about the significant increase of water consumption in its areas of supply. The increase in water consumption is putting severe strain on Rand Water's distribution network. To save water, please do not wash your cars with hose pipes. Use buckets. Water your garden with sprinklers between sunset and sunrise. Do not wash your pavements with hose pipes. Use brooms. Repair your leaking taps. Cover your swimming pools to avoid quick evaporation. Shower instead of bathing in a tub.
This message is sponsored by Rand Water in partnership with City of Joburg, City of Ekurhuleni, and City of Tshwane.
Various African outfits will display a great brand of cricket this festive season. Kenya, Ghana and Cameroon will play their hearts out in the East-West qualifier of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. They will all endeavour to clinch one of 4 remaining spots. This is the journey to the finals of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. Witness the thrilling action from 5 to 10 December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Hashtag SAFMBTH. The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
The next conversation is brought to you by South African Tourism. It is Tourism Thursdays here on Beyond the Headline. We're in conversation next with Baba Khanidiwe, who is the head of destination marketing at Gauteng Tourism. This festive season, Gauteng Tourism will be promoting the province's diverse, breathtaking leisure and adventure activities, family-friendly spaces, water parks, to curb the heat wave and mouth-watering Gauteng food. Gauteng will ensure that everyone is covered, from the parents, kids, right to visiting Omakulu. Joining us now to tell us more about Gauteng's festive summer is Baba. Baba, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Afternoon, Edwin, and your listeners. Quite exciting to be here and dealing with the heat, but it's the summer in Orlando, in Gauteng, the Golden Province, so we are quite excited to move into this without the hindrance of restrictions of COVID, unlike in the past 3 years.
Yeah. Inani le Gauteng. In Orlando. What is the thing that Gauteng is offering?
And it's not necessarily the animals or the mountains or the sea. It's the 15.5 million people that are pregnant with the zeal, with the determination. They represent the buzz and the energy that is housed in this Golden Province. These people are found in their creative spaces. They are found in their safe spaces. They are found in the townships. They are found in our hiking GPs, Kibo Makelwani. They are being neighborly this weekend as we launch the festive summer. But equally, they are found in our breathtaking spaces, in our townships, in our creative spaces. Gone are the days where the festive season we were shoved into the van, dropped a kaya. Now people are expressing themselves within relatively youthful urban population, township vibes, hiking, rooftop experiences, the Shampopo pairing of champagne and mohodu, which before would have not been hand, from part of our conquering sound, underpinned by the majestic sounds of Amapiano. So when the world dances to our tunes, these tunes are cooked here in the Golden Province and permeating throughout South Africa.
What is it about the Gauteng lifestyle that makes it different to any other province? Of course, we are the smallest province, but yet we have the biggest population. But what is it about the lifestyle that gives it Lando?
That lifestyle, one, is inspirational. When a child is born in Matatiele, they can't wait to come to Egoli. So we take the burden of providing that inspiration, but not just the inspiration, the fulfillment of that dream. That young creative who gets born in Ramatlabama in Mafikeng and wants to see the lights, but not only the lights in Gauteng, wants to permeate through Africa. That's what this Golden Province has to offer. Even if we dial down into the business of business and welcome the creative and festive summer as part of our offerings, we are not switching off completely from that connection around seeking that opportunity. That's that land, though. You are able to get a business deal. You are able to get a connection that takes you to New York, that takes you to any other spaces on Christmas Eve, sipping champopo. And that's the always-on approach of this destination. We are always looking at opportunities. We are looking at plugging each other. We are looking at being open, responsive, welcoming, expressing our diversity. We are the only province that throughout Africa have the largest diplomatic capital, actually second to Washington. Therefore, that reinforces our diversity. But again, until proven otherwise, the cradle of humankind remains Africa's birthplace. So those that have been affected by COVID as humanity, we need to come back and touch base with our common human ancestry and actually thank other parts that we have survived COVID and we are looking forward to conquer as we live again.
Mm-hmm. So somebody touches down, let's say today at OR Tambo International Airport or at Lanseria Airport, where would you advise them to go to first?
And that's the beauty of the province. Within 15 minutes drive, you'll be on the richest square mile on the continent. You've been taking the Gau train. You'll then go into the rooftop experience and being on the highest rooftop on the continent. And from there, as you go down, you are able to go and walk in the Golden Mile and shop at a relatively low value than going to Paris or going to London. But safely from there, within a 30 minutes drive, you are able to take a selfie with the giraffes or the rhinos at the Lion and Rhino Park. All of this you are able to do within a space of an hour and a half. And if you want to beat the heat wave that is characterizing our space, you take into a boat and you go into our coastal region interval and you are able to play in the water down there. Or you are able to go to Lanseria and take pictures inside the private jet that are sitting there to project the life that is being presented.
The aspirational life that we speak.
The aspirational life that I'm talking. But some entrepreneurs making money out of Lanseria, out of that exercise, and somebody get to live.
Oh wait, so you can just go take pictures.
And that definitely, and say life lives here. But the reality is that that's back to inspire something. Therefore, our spaces are not just a space open from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We are able to sweat our infrastructure. We are able to use the Gau train parking spaces. If the trains are not running as venues for book launches, as venues for other activities. We have seen how we transform Constitution Hill from being a museum of pain that houses Mahatma Gandhi and Madiba, and now is the heart of our creative expressions, with a lot of events happening there that represent our move from that pain to what we are celebrating now. So that's this Golden Province, where we are the net exporter of domestic travel. We are not stopping people from going out of Gauteng, but we want them when they go to Eastern Cape, Madkutugal, you should be able to go with that GP lifestyle, with that swag, and inspire others that you are meeting on the other side.
Yeah. So in conclusion, though, one of the concerns that normally gets raised when it comes to Joburg is the issue around safety and crime. Tell us about some of the initiatives that you have as Gauteng Tourism to deal with this issue of safety for tourists.
Absolutely. And it's not just safety for tourists, it's safety for residents and visitors. We are integrating everything in. The Premier was speaking about the high-tech CCTV cameras and the use of drones and other high artillery equipment to fight crime for residents and visitors. That's how the visiting economy benefits from such an initiative. The deployment of over 3,000 Amapanyaza, or the crime prevention warders, into our wards, into our communities is an example of how, as a caring province and a destination that is powering above its weight, we are taking serious this issue. The Secura app is one of the initiatives that we are supporting as the province, launched by the minister, to enable tourists to be able, at the press of a button, to ask for help. But all these initiatives, Aldrin, your listeners, will not bear fruit if the hosting communities that are supposed to benefit out of the growth of our tourism are not part. These will be the people that firstly apprehend. And we have seen an incident, a lot of incidents at Vilakazi Street, where the communities are the one that apprehend somebody who has stolen a purse from the ladies there, because they have seen the direct benefits of tourism. Their children have been able to go to school out of selling out of Sakumzi and other spaces. So the fight against crime is a multi-pronged approach where communities becomes part. They must be beneficiaries of the projects that we are doing, and we will win against the scourge of crime.
Baba, thank you so much for your time. But in conclusion, what's your favorite place in Gauteng?
My favorite place will always remain Bram, where you are able to, and at the market, at the Play Bramfontein market, you are able to see the diversity of the province, young and old. You are able to be yourself and nobody judges you.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That is Baba Ghandiwe, who is the head of destination marketing at Gauteng Tourism. So what's your favorite place in Gauteng? And perhaps maybe tell us about what is it that you love about Gauteng. Yes, we've got some of our problems, but there must be something special about the province, considering that we have the highest population compared to any other province in the country. So what is it that you love about Gauteng? Maybe you can share those with us on 0614 104 107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032. That conversation proudly brought to you by SA Tourism.
There is a piece of paradise for everyone in South Africa. You can get lost in the clear night sky of the desert, hike up to majestic mountains and waterfalls, explore the fun and vibey outdoor events and festivities, feast on perfect seafood on a tranquil coast, or just cruise on a game drive witnessing the Big Five. Whatever your taste, opportunities await. SA Tourism, inspiring new ways.
And it's time for the news with Mudupi Makhalemele. Good afternoon.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thank you very much, Aldrin. The top stories this hour: a severe storm warning for parts of the Free State, and ANC veteran slams Ramaphosa's leadership. A very good afternoon. The Weather Service has issued a Level 5 severe storm warning for Bloemfontein and Bethlehem as recurring systems of thunderstorms are developing in the eastern and central parts of the Free State. The rest of the province is on Level 2, with strong winds, heavy downpours, as well as isolated hailstorms. Yesterday, thunderstorms caused widespread damage in most parts of Mangaung and Dihlabeng. The Weather Service says the storm is expected to continue into the afternoon and throughout the evening. Forecaster Michael Netavani.
Going forward, we see rain weather producing systems which is on the way, is expected to make a landfall over the Free State by Sunday, when widespread of showers and thunder showers can be expected.
The Weather Service has also issued a Level 2 severe storms warning today in some parts of the country, such as the Free State, KZN and Gauteng. A 21-year-old woman has drowned at Strandfontein Beach in Cape Town after she was caught in a rip current while swimming with a friend. The National Sea Rescue Institute says they were alerted about a drowning in progress at Strandfontein Beach near the tidal pool. Spokesperson Craig Lambinon says the city's law enforcement marine officers were first on the scene.
A law enforcement marine senior inspector launched into the surf where he reached the casualty, finding her lifeless in the water. He brought her to the shore where he was assisted by two fellow law enforcement marine officers to recover the female onto the shore, where they initiated cardiopulmonary resuscitation efforts. After all efforts to resuscitate the female were exhausted, sadly, she was declared deceased.
The Steel and Engineering Industries Federation has threatened to take legal action against the government if the scrap metal ban continues. It says the whole plan for the steel industry could collapse if this issue is not sorted out. The Federation's President Elias Monache says although they requested a meeting with the Trade and Industry Minister, the engagement did not go as planned.
If the industry continue then to bring certain things, Minister is not, it then means the entire process or the entire plan goes down south. The other part of the problem is that because Minister is not engaging the industry on key strategic issues, for example, we then look at the scrap ban that was introduced last year. It was introduced on the premise that there is a vandalism of the infrastructure and theft and criminality, and therefore the ban will then assist. But to date,
ANC struggle veteran Mavuso Msimang says, like many South Africans, he had hope when President Cyril Ramaphosa took over from his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, in 2018. He describes the Zuma tenure as the most disastrous administration ever in the history of the ANC's governance. But speaking to our news desk after the termination of his membership from the governing party, the 82-year-old former deputy president of the ANC Veterans League says the Ramaphosa leadership lost the initiative when it started to tolerate corruption and surround itself with what he calls shady characters.
The new dawn is yet to come. The public has not seen the dawn. There are good steps that have been taken, but whatever you do is tied to an objective that you agreed. I want by a certain time for the GDP to be at 3.5%, and I'll get it there by doing A, B, C, D. I mean, you talk about the new dawn when we have no lights because ESCOM is not functioning. If I was in charge, I would take the blame for these things happening because I would want to find out from my charges why are we about to get a water crisis? What new thing has arisen that would have prevented a proper process that would ensure there's good maintenance of systems?
And the social media giant Meta says it has begun rolling out automatic end-to-end encryption for personal messages sent on its Facebook and Messenger platforms. This means that messages will only be read by the sender and recipient unless a user reports a message. Meta says that the new default feature will greatly increase online privacy and security for its users. But law enforcement agencies have argued against the encryption, which they say hugely limits their ability to protect children from online sexual abuse. Recapping the top story at 5, the Weather Service has issued a Level 5 severe storm warning for Bloemfontein and Bethlehem as recurring systems of thunderstorms are developing in the eastern and central parts of the Free State. Back with headlines at past for SAFM News. Kimudupi Makhalemeli.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Kune stripped of Kaizer Chiefs captaincy. Proteas look ahead to the second test against the England Roses, and rain washes out second day in Bangladesh and New Zealand test. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Reminder of load shedding in the Fourways area, so the N1 south from Buccleuch all the way down to the William Mandela off-ramp is under pressure today. In fact, that queue starts around about sort of Yatske River Bridge on the N1 south coming through mid-ramp. The Mike 1 from Parktown all the way through to Woodmead is unusually busy today. And if you're coming out of Sandton on William Mandela, there's a big backlog of traffic. Looks like roadworks near Peter Place. So from Sandton Drive, that run up through Hurlingham is very unusually busy. Load shedding in the Brooklyn and Hatfield parts of Pretoria, so that's just generally very slow. And here's some good news at last. We had a closure of the N3 to Durban at Cato Ridge because of a truck crash at Hammersdale. That truck crash is basically cleared. The road has been reopened. All that traffic was then released into a stationary truck around Cato Ridge. That truck has been cleared, and the traffic is moving off quite quickly. So if you're about to leave Pietermaritzburg, there is some traffic between sort of Linfield Park and Cato Ridge, but it's looking a lot better than it did earlier. The problem with all that traffic being released, it all arrives at Marin Hill Plaza at the same time, so a bit of a bottleneck to get through there. Cape Town CBD, reasonably busy. It is First Thursday, so that always attracts a lot of events. Beta truck heading from Whale Street towards the elevated freeway seems to be the jam. And you've got queues on the Greenpoint side and the CBD point side of that as well. And then just staying in Cape Town, busy conditions around the beaches, particularly Corker Bay and the Musenberg. Delays both ways along the main road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the
conversation.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi. Because where words fail, music speaks.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Beyond the Headline on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
It is 10 minutes after 5 o'clock and it's time for the interview, and we're in conversation today with Anush Rublal, who is the South African Post Office Business Rescue practitioner. So as we indicated a bit earlier on, that the news that just came in before we started the show was that the creditors have voted in favor of the business rescue plan that is aimed at rescuing the ailing South African Post Office, and this unfortunately means that the retrenchment of approximately 6,000 employees will now go ahead as proposed by the business rescue practitioners. Recently, the joint business rescue practitioners of the South African Post Office, Anush Rublal, as well as Juanito Damons, painted a very disturbing picture about the state of affairs surrounding the post office. According to them, the organization's financial sustainability is a critical concern that demands immediate attention. For instance, as of July this year, the post office had a negative shareholder equity of 7.9 billion and its costs have exceeded 200% of its revenue. But can the organization be saved, or is it just a little too late? Anush Rublal now joining us on the line. Anush, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon to you and your listeners, and thank you for having me on your show.
Can you just quickly take us through the vote that took place earlier on today?
Yes, sure. So it was the official meeting of creditors, the second meeting of creditors. The main agenda for today was to vote for the creditors to vote on the adoption of the business rescue plan. And I'm pleased to announce that we've received the required threshold of more than 75%, in which then the business rescue plan was officially adopted. And what that means now is that it's the proposals in the plan becomes binding on all creditors. It allows us as the business rescue practitioners to now move to the next phase where we focus on the implementation of the plan.
So what is the first business of the day that the business rescue practitioners would have to go through?
Yes, so as you've already highlighted, key elements of the plan includes, so now that we've got adoption, it allows us to go ahead with the retrenchment process, the right sizing of the staff complement. Unfortunately, it's not a great thing, but, we have to unfortunately retrench approximately 6,000 employees, and that's we've been constant consultation with the unions and representatives in order to do that, and a formal process will now commence. The second thing, it allows us to rationalize the branches. In other words, we will be closing a certain amount of branches, which then will allow us to have approximately 600 branches going forward. But I think more importantly, the plan, allows effectively creditors have voted to accept the proposal of receiving 12 cents in the rand as full and final payment of the claim. So this effectively allows the entity now to return to a solvent position as well, which bodes well for the future trading abilities of the entity.
And what's the accumulated debt currently?
If you look at the financial statements, there was debt of approximately 12.5 billion. And of course, through our processes, we have now proven creditors of approximately 8 billion. The balance of that relates to certain accounting related creditors. And effectively, like I said, the proposal allows us to settle 12% or 12 cents in the rand for concurrent creditors. There is a class of creditors that we've grouped, referred to as statutory or employee-related creditors, and they will get an additional 18 cents in the rand, and that's dependent on future funding that's still to come into the organization.
So when it comes to the retrenchment of some of the workers, the 6,000 figure has been there even before you were appointed as the business rescue practitioner. But are you able to state what the rationale behind it is?
Yes, so in fact, there was a higher figure, as quoted by the minister in his application. So we had, as independent business rescue practitioners, we came in and made an assessment of the business requirements. And of course, a key focus is looking at cost reduction. So quite at the moment, the cost base is simply unsustainable for the entity to be rescued and to move forward. So what that does, it allows us to achieve an annual saving of approximately R1 billion a year through employee cost savings through the retrenchment process.
Okay, and how do you decide who goes and who stays? Because I think the last figure that you gave was just over 11,000 staff members?
Yeah, so we have currently just over 11,000. The retrenchment looks at approximately 6,000 employees, which should leave us with approximately 5,000 employees going forward for a sustained operation to happen. I think importantly is that the retrenchment process is a formal one. So we have been in constant consultations with the unions and non-employee representatives. It is a formal process that will be dealt with responsibly in terms of the Labour Relations Act, and that's the Section 189 process that will officially kick off now that we've got the plan adopted.
And how soon would you have to reach that 6,000 figure?
So again, by following the process, generally the facilitated process in terms of the act, the legislation, it's a 60-day process. We as business rescue practitioners are aiming to achieve and complete this by end of March 2024.
End of March 2024. Okay, now let's look at the branches that you are looking at closing down. Can you give us an idea of where some of those branches are and what the reasoning behind closing them down is?
Yeah, so we had to look at the sustainability and affordability factors. We had to get to a number of branches that makes the post office viable again. That in no way means that it's a pegged number. Once the business is able to turn around and generate cash flows and be more self-sustaining, it certainly will allow for the branch footprint to increase in the future. It is part of a 3 to 5 year strategy. And some of the criteria we had to look at was clearly, volumes of transaction at branches, profitability of branches. But more importantly, part of the post office being rescued is that it has to fulfill a social mandate. And that's being able to service, the poor South African and the poor citizens in rural areas. And that's what we refer to as our universal service obligations. So that is clearly a social requirement. It's a mandate requirement. And that is also another key factor. So it's a blend of branches that looks at where we have to be in rural areas, level of activities, profitability, and other criteria. Obviously, there's duplication of branches within certain geographic regions. We would look to curtail and optimize all of that.
Okay. And when it comes to the branches, you said you're going to be looking at going ahead with only around 600, meaning how many do you anticipate will be closed?
So when we had stepped in as business rescue practitioners, there was a figure of over 1,000, approximately 1,100 branches. Unfortunately, given the financial distress that the entity has been experiencing, a lot of them were, temporarily closed, etc. So we had a figure of about 870 odd, approximately 850 branches rather that were operational. So we're going to further look to permanently close those that are temporarily closed, and of course, close the remaining to bring it down to 600 as highlighted.
So would those be the ones that are in Joburg as well? I think one's in Rosebank as well.
Yes, it's we've developed detailed models that looks at the branch analysis, and it's a combination of branches across all geographies, across all regions. I think it's still important. One of the balancing acts there is that we still maintain presence in as much as possible, across the country, according to the criteria that I've just highlighted earlier.
Yeah. Because the other point that you also raise in the business rescue plan is that as it stands currently, SA Post Office owes numerous property owners an aggregate of approximately 400 million at the end of July 2023. Would you be able to pay off that money?
Yes. So what the adoption of the plan does, it effectively creates a compromise with creditors, and these are all creditors, including landlords that we owe money, and what we refer to as pre-commencement creditors. So those values are pegged, and as part of adopting the plan, all creditors will receive 12 cents in the rand, or 12% of what is owed to them as a full and final settlement, and then post commencement is where now that the entity will return to a solvent state and it allows us to fix and repair, we will be able to make all payments to service providers as and when we procure those services.
What happens to the parcels that are at post offices that have been closed down?
Yes, so there is that's part of the processes that we are fixing. Unfortunately, again, due to the financial distress, with the pressures of branches being closed and landlords evicting us, we had to create certain protocols, which we have. And that's something that we're actively looking at to make sure that parcels and letters are reclaimed and redistributed to other post-operating branches, and that it's still feasible and allows our customers to go and collect those parcels and letters.
Mm-hmm. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086-000-2032, and you can drop us comments rather on Facebook as well as on our YouTube page. We're in conversation with Anush Ruplal, who is the SA Post Office Business Rescue Practitioner. Earlier on today, the creditors voted in favor of adopting the business rescue plan that has been adopted, and that has been drafted, and that's the conversation that we're having now on also what happens next for the post office. Maybe any questions that you have and any clarity that you may seek, give us a call on 086-000-2032.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion. Is for Ikoko who steady chill on neutral on a downhill just to save fuel. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion Station. Gautrain, for people on the move. Various African outfits will display a great brand of cricket this festive season. Kenya, Ghana and Cameroon will play their hearts out in the East-West qualifier of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. They will all endeavor to clinch one of 4 remaining spots. This is the journey to the finals of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. Witness the thrilling action from 5 to 10 December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
0614-104-107 and X at Aldrin Sampear.
Hi, Aldrin. Make me understand something here. Why is it that these creditors, post office creditors, they are accepting 12% of the money that is being owed to them? When it comes to personal accounts, if say someone is owing any clothing shop or whatever, or it's a credit card, it's a bank, why is it that they end up attaching or having judgments? Why don't these creditors that we owe personally, why don't they allow or accept maybe 12%, 15% of the amount that you're owing as the full and the final settlement? Why is it like that? This is Simon in Polokwane. Thank you.
Okay, Simon. Anush, I don't know if you'd be able to tackle that one.
Yes, absolutely. Sure. And thanks for the question. Yes, very simply, the business was in financial distress. And and business rescue aims to do exactly that, to rescue the entity, because the only other alternative would be to liquidate the entity. And in a liquidation scenario, and from the independent calculations that we've received, if the post office were to be liquidated, all creditors would receive a dividend of 4.08 cents, so effectively 4 cents in the rand. Now, the aim of business rescue is to provide a return that is better than that a creditor would receive on liquidation, and clearly 12 cents is definitely better than 4 cents. And the added benefit is that we get to turn around and still keep the post office operational. So from a creditor's perspective, one has to weigh the return that he or she would get from liquidation versus the business rescue, and we clearly are providing a much better return.
And would you know why, with the personal accounts, for instance, if I owe let's say we owe Edgar's, why doesn't Edgar's accept 12 cents to the rand?
Because because Edgar's is, if you look at it, it's looking at the entity that owes you the money. It looks at the ability of that entity to pay back its debt. And quite simply, if there are no assets, or if there's only assets sufficient to realize a certain amount, and that's why I'm saying liquidation. Mm-hmm. The liquidation scenario talks to selling your assets, and that would be in a forced sale scenario. And if all the assets that you have only realizes X amount of cents, in this case 4 cents, that's what you would get. In terms, and what the business rescue does as well, it allows for what we refer to as a moratorium. So in other words, it allows the flood of all of its creditors suing the entity simultaneously, because if that happens as well, it pushes into liquidation, which gives you the default 4 cents in the rand. So the moratorium allows the business rescue practitioner time to breathe, time to assess the operations, put it together a plan that gives you a better return than do it on liquidation. Okay. So that's as simply as I could answer that.
Let's go to Gqeberha. Marius, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Aldrin. I just want to find out from the guy there, what is going to happen to us that is off on temporary disability at the post office. I've been off from work since 2008.
And you used to work for the post office?
I work for the post office, but I'm legally blind.
Okay. Okay, Anush?
Yes, so we are dealing comprehensively with all employer-related matters, with the union representatives as well as those representatives representing non-unionized workers. So it is a collective forum called the Employees Committee, which was established, and we are looking at all aspects of employer-related matters, which includes, medical schemes, the retirement fund. Unfortunately, we were also large creditors, of the SA Post Office, and who got to also vote on this. So within the confines of the plan, that's how we are dealing comprehensively with all employer-related matters.
Just quickly on the 19 billion rand accumulated losses as of 30th September 2023. Since when have we experienced this particular loss that has brought us to 19 billion accumulated?
When we joined as the BRPs, one of the assessments was to understand, which way the loss making is. So clearly, the last financial year was a loss making. In the current year in which we have joined for a certain part of the year, again, there's a forecast loss. So historically, in the financial years building up, as opposed to 31 March 2023. So that's the cumulative losses that the post office has experienced. So that's where those numbers are coming from.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's quickly speak about the future and the plans that you have for the future. Of course, looking at some of the services that the post office is already offering, like postal service, bulk mail, as well as hybrid mail. But what's the new thing that the post office could offer so that it is fit for purpose and it lives and exists in the 21st century?
Yeah, so I'd like to start off by highlighting that postal operators globally, not just the SA Post Office, has been experiencing declines in, conventional letter postal revenue. Mm-hmm. So that's a trend that we're seeing globally from our research. And if you look at the four categories, you've got letter post revenue, you've got parcels and logistics revenue. The third stream is financial services revenue, and of course the fourth stream is digital services revenue or digital revenue. So globally, what we're finding is that there's diversification away and more into digital revenue, and that's what our plan also allows for. And this is how we are looking to modernize and automate the post office locally. And it looks at a combination of some of the elements that was defined in the Post Office Tomorrow strategy, which the department had highlighted. And there's certain key elements that's coming through from that as well. And I think it really talks to fixing the infrastructure base, the platform, and investing monies to modernize and automate so that we can then take advantage of the digital services and the other diversified revenue streams that we've identified. So yeah, it's a bit of a general comment, but again, very much tracks the trend of what we're seeing with other global postal operators.
With an ability to compete with the private couriers, can the post office do that?
So the core infrastructure still exists. At the SA Post Office. It's unfortunate that there was degradation of, some of the infrastructure, but the core still exists. And I think that's where we're looking at partnerships with the private sector that will also help us in implementing the plan. So there's certainly an openness to making capital investments, but looking at creative partnerships that takes the post office to the next level and makes it fit for the modern South Africa, so to speak.
Have there been any proposals that have come forth?
We have received quite a number of unsolicited proposals. Now that the plan is adopted, our next focus area would be to analyze this and run a process according to the laws and regulations for us to then go out and then procure lucrative partnerships that works for the mutual benefit of both the private sector partner as well as the post office.
Yeah. And any plans for the Post Bank to take over some of the assets of the post office?
So we are in discussions with the Post Bank. As you may be aware, that they now it's been officially announced, or the bill has been passed by Parliament, which allows them to be an independent, self-standing entity. To that effect, we will continue to engage with the Post Bank, seeing that they are a sister entity. We have the same shareholder, and we'd look to explore possible, initiatives, and possibly looking at things like other revenue-generating activities, co-sharing, or even certain branches, possibly that the Post Bank may or may not want to take over. So those are early stages. There's a transitional arrangements being put in place. From a SASSA perspective, we will still be utilized over the next few months by the Post Bank in order to make cash payments to SASSA beneficiaries. That's the grant payments. So just want to highlight to listeners that, we will still support the Post Bank and people can still come in and get those cash grants. But obviously that's in a transitional arrangement that we're working on with the Post Bank.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Anush Ruplal, who is the South African Post Office Business Rescue Practitioner. As you just heard, that the plan has been adopted. Around 6,000 post office workers are set to lose their jobs. It's 5:30, time for the news headlines with Mudubi Makhalime.
Thank you very much, Aldrin. A very good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, the trial of an experimental HIV vaccine in Uganda, Tanzania, and South Africa has been stopped early after preliminary data suggested it would not be effective in preventing infection. The Weather Service has issued a Level 5 severe storm warning for Bloemfontein and Bethlehem as recurring systems of thunderstorms are developing in the eastern and central parts of the Free State. And a West African regional court has dismissed a petition from Niger to lift sanctions that were imposed on it after July's coup. Those are your headlines. A full news update, 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
M1 South to Winnie Mandela stays busy with some load shedding in the four-ways area. Queues from Buccleuch, also Main and Vidcop, and looks like the lights are out there with load shedding. That's all very heavily backed up. The N1 through Midrand, not too bad. The R101, the Pretoria Main, and the Old Johannesburg Road, perhaps even heavier congestion than the N1. So if you're on the side road, you're in a bit of trouble. The N1 not too bad. All the dramas that we had earlier today between, Cato Ridge and Hammersdale have largely been cleared up, but it's released all of that backlog to sort of hit Marion Hill Plaza at the same time, so you might just find some delays there. Cape Town Central, CBD, very heavily backed up. I think it's a combination of First Thursday events, plus this weekend's big Sevens event that's underway at the stadium. So that Central Cape Town area through the CBD, out through Divatakant and Greenpoint, just very, very heavily congested, and some load shedding around Milnerton, Montague Gardens, Century City, Summer Green, so that's all busy. And a collision on Jake's Kerville Drive, southbound just by the railway bridge. That's causing a big delay from sort of France Conradi Drive right through on your way towards almost a casino. Northbound getting caught up, having a look as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
In your sports this hour, let's start things off with football. CAF has announced the shortlist for the categories for the CAF Awards 2023. Banyana coach Desiree Ellis and Mamelodi Sundowns ladies coach Jerry Shabalala have been nominated alongside Morocco coach Reynald Petros for Coach of the Year. And Banyana's Andile Dlamini has been nominated for Goalkeeper of the Year alongside Morocco's Khadija Amici and Chiamaka Ndadozi of Nigeria. In other notable categories, Sundowns ladies duo Refilwe Tolakele and Lebogang Ramalepe have been nominated for the Inter Club of the Year, while Timbi Khatlana is a finalist in Player of the Year alongside Nigeria's Asisat Ashwala, who's on course for winning the award for the 6th consecutive time, and Zambia's Barbara Banda. Then Al Ahli's Percy Tau and Sundown striker Peter Shalulile are nominated for Inter Club Player of the Year. Still staying with football, Premier Soccer League club Kaizer Chiefs have suspended and removed the captaincy of longtime goalkeeper Itumeleng Khune. This is after media reports emerged of Khune reporting to training under the influence of alcohol. Chief said the former Bafana keeper will be enrolled in certain programs, and during his absence, Khune will be expected to attend and actively participate in programs designed to support his personal growth and development with support from the club. These programs are specifically aimed at helping him address challenges and issues that he is facing while promoting a positive team culture. In netball, the Netball Proteas are all set to make a strong impression in the second test against England Roses in Nottingham on Sunday night at 7 p.m. And after a 54-51 loss in the first test in Manchester, Proteas assistant coach Dumisani Chauke has expressed her pride in the commendable effort displayed by the younger players against a formidable netball powerhouse. She feels that the Proteas have the potential to stage a comeback in the second test and anticipates a significant upswing in performance from the Proteas come Saturday.
Definitely not the start that we wanted, but the finish that we wanted gave us an opportunity as well to gauge ourselves against the Netball World Cup silver medalists. They also did have quite a few youngsters on the court on their side, and we were also fortunate enough to be able to give some of our youngsters opportunity to take court. And we're quite proud of what they delivered. The future looks bright, but there's still just certain things that we need to get back to the drawing board on, especially, when you look at the turnovers and also, making use of the ball when we do have it in our hands.
In rugby, Springbok Sevens prop Christy Grobler has been ruled out of the HSBC Sevens Cape Town this weekend. This is after sustaining an ankle injury. Grobler picked up the injury at last weekend's Emirates Dubai Sevens when they won by the Blitzboks for a 5th consecutive and 11th time overall. He underwent a scan in Cape Town after the team arrived back from Dubai, which revealed that he is unfit to play on Saturday and on Sunday. Then moving on to tennis news, Rafa Nadal, two-time champion Rafa Nadal, has been included on the entry list for the Australian Open after nearly a year out with injury, while Nick Kyrgios looks set to miss the tournament in Jan. Nadal has been out of action since since injury on his hip at the last Australian Open, and the former world number one recently confirmed that he would make his return at January's Brisbane International. Kyrgios has had an injury-blighted 2023, missing all 4 majors. The 28-year-old has struggled with his wrist, knee and foot injuries and said last month that the stars would need to align for him to be fit for the first major of the year. In theory, he could still be awarded a wild card, and defending champion and world number one Novak Djokovic will return as he bids for a record-extending 11th men's Australian Open title and 25th Grand Slam win overall. In athletics, South Africa's athletics coach Samuel Sebeng says that he's confident that middle distance runners will secure a podium finish at the upcoming 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. The Games are set to get under in the capital city of France, and it's happening from the 26th of July to the 11th of August. Athletics South Africa has fallen short of clinching medals in 4 consecutive championships, including the World Championships in Doha in 2019, also in 2021, 2023, as well as the preceding Olympic Games in Tokyo. Ending things off with the cricket. Rain washed out the second day of play without a ball being played today in the second test between Bangladesh and New Zealand. Match officials called an end to the day, with the weather showing no signs of improvement. 15 wickets fell in the first day, with the tourists trailing by 117 after being held to 55 for 5 at stumps. Bangladesh opted to bat first and were all out for 172 runs in their first innings, and the hosts lead the 2-match series 1-0 after a 150-run win in the opening test. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. Don't forget to tune in to our sports show, Top Sport, with Michael Abramson. That is from 7 till 8 p.m. Other than that, my name is Dumin Kapele Mudimugio.
Yeah, I'm sure Nelly has newfound respect for me. I had to sort her out, hey? Next time she keeps quiet while I'm talking to her, she'll think twice, I tell you.
Hey, Banas, coach. And that'll be a perfect example to your son on how to treat a woman.
Hey, man, what does my son have to do with this now?
Man, coach, you tell me, man. Look how you turned out and think deep. Pella, the cycle could end with you. Let us uplift the boy child and raise real men for a gender violence-free tomorrow. A message brought to you by Love Life. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Brighton and Hove Albion are going all out to brighten their clash against Burnley FC with maximum points.
At Digmer again, that was a masterpiece.
However, Burnley FC will display a sense of urgency to move up from the relegation zone.
Dariola has scored! Down the middle! Burnley lead! Shane Rodriguez!
Who will have a great day on the field of play? The Seagulls or the Clarets? This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Brighton and Hove Albion and Burnley FC on Saturday, 9 December at 4 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moyaha, who will be in conversation with the CEO of Cell C later on this evening. So they're selling off their spectrum and network licenses. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Good afternoon to the listeners. That's what I thought was happening when I saw the headline and I read the article. It very much sounded that way, but it looks like it's a very different story. So we're going to get the actual news directly from the source, and what better way than to speak to the CEO. We're going to get a sense of what's happening there, what it means for Cell C customers, and everybody else involved. We know that the business sold off their towers business to MTN a while ago, so we're just going to look into what's left there. Cell C hasn't been a profitable business. The latest set of financials did swing into a net income, but their earnings before interest and tax was down quite significantly, north of 500% there. So we're going to speak to the CEO, get a sense of what's actually happening with the spectrum and the networking licensing, and why the article that we saw today put out said that they were selling that if they are not. We're also going to be chatting to Dr. Roelof Botha, who's an independent economist, around the latest construction in index that was published by Afrimat for the third quarter of the year, showing some signs of improvement. In fact, we're seeing some numbers that we haven't seen since 2016. So going to dig into that in quite a bit of detail and see what's been driving that. We're going to speak to the CEO of Aspen Pharmacare around a couple of developments that have happened in the Aspen stable. They announced their expansion into China earlier this week. We know that they've also been on quite a shopping spree and signing a couple of deals, and they had their AGM today. So we just do a wrap of what happened at the AGM today, what are the other deals looking like, where the business is positioned, and what the market thinks of it, because despite all of the good news, the market seems to think that Aspen is still underutilizing their manufacturing facilities, and this is despite the fact that Aspen paid a dividend per share that was 5% higher than last year. So I'm interested to see what is unfolding there and what it means for shareholders and investors that might be looking at that stock. And then we get a sense of the statement that was made by the French government around trade in South Africa. The French businesses have said that it's so the foreign French trade advisor in South Africa put out a statement saying that France believes that the future of investments in South Africa is unstable given some of the conditions that prevail in South Africa. And our editor at MoneyWeb, Ryk van Niekerk, actually caught up with that president of the French Foreign Trade Advisory. So we're going to get a sense of what they mean by that, whether or not it still is the case. I mean, it was just released yesterday as a statement, and it's important because France is the second largest trade partner in Europe for South Africa behind Germany. So quite a significant statement to be made there, and we find out just what it all means. And then because it is a Thursday, we've got our SME of the week, and on today's show we take a look at a company called Baby Cuddles. The founder, Melanie Lang, is going to give me a sense of what the company does, how she contributes towards her economy and her little community, and what products they sell. We're still profiling SMEs and businesses that could potentially provide really good Christmas presents and Christmas ideas for those that are struggling to find gifts for their loved ones. But before we get to all of those stories, Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on the markets for us. It looks like it's been another weird day with markets in the red, but the rand strengthening and oil prices still below $75 on record for the absolute worst week for oil since October, and that's exciting for all of us. But Henko, what else has been moving the markets?
Hello, Jimmy and Aldrin, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, Jimmy, it's quite nice when you say it like that. We like it when oil is having its worst week in a really long time. But it's going very well on US markets and US stocks at this stage, with the Dow Jones 0.1% up, then the S&P 500 trading 0.8% stronger, and the Nasdaq well above 1%, now about 1.5% stronger so far. European stocks closed in the red though, with the FTSE 100, the DAX and the CAC 40 each finishing about 0.2% weaker. A similar story on the JSE, with the all-share index finishing 0.8% down today, and that was at a closing level of 74,824 points. The financial index finished 1.8% down, the resources index 0.5% weaker, and the industrial index lost 0.6% today. You'll recall that British American Tobacco lost 10% yesterday, and now coming back today, fighting back, and BAT's finishing 2.5% stronger at the end of today's trading. Glencore and Anglo each finished 1% stronger, but AB InBev and Richmond each 1% weaker, and FirstRand and Standard Bank each losing 2.5% today. Telkom also lost out today, 5.5% down. Sirius as well as AECI, each of those two 4.5% weaker. Adcock, Anglo Gold and Montauk Renewable Energy finished 3.5% down, and DRD Gold, Pepco Holdings, Nedbank as well as SPAR each finishing the day 3% weaker. On the positive side of things, Karoo had a great day, 6.5% up. Implats and Northern each 3.5% stronger, with Amplats just behind Implats, about 3% stronger at the end of the day. Tungela and Tsogo Sun each gained 2%. On the commodities market, the price of gold still relatively high, now trading at $2,035 an ounce. Silver is sitting comfortably at $24, platinum trading at $910 an ounce, and palladium at $970. Like you said, Brent crude now trading at $74.70 a barrel, which is very nice to see. The rand also a little bit stronger than yesterday, but not as strong, but looking a bit better. 18 rand 80 to the US dollar, 23 rand 60 to the pound, 20 rand 25 cents to the euro, and 12 rand 35 cents to the Australian dollar. Bitcoin having another great day, $43,500. That's more or less 850,000 rand. Jimmy, that's how your markets performed today.
Thanks very much for that update, Henko. I'm interested to see what happens now with Blue Label Telecoms after we chat to their CEO. I think the miners are just going through quite a bit at the moment. It's nice to see Implats, though, having a positive day. They haven't had too many of those recently, and MTN's back above 100 Rand. That's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. But we'll catch up with the listeners just after 6. For now, Aldrin, we're going to cross back to you and the team, and we'll be waiting around the corner.
Thank you so much. Jimmy is back again just after 6 o'clock.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN, OTP feature, and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
Hallo Michelle, hope you're well. You know, mos, I'm not very lekker for online internet shopping things after Uncle Donnie got a second loan on his house to pay for some escort in Portugal's child to go to university. But listen, I'm addicted to this We Buy Cars auctions. Every day you can buy cars. My finger is jikkerig on the smells. I'm going to click anytime now because I want a fancy fast car. But my husband is making me so moeg. I'm sommer listen auction him. I nogal wonder how much I will get.
We Buy Cars, the best place to buy a car by far.
Various African outfits will display a great brand of cricket this festive season. Kenya, Ghana and Cameroon will play their hearts out in the East-West qualifier of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. They will all endeavour to clinch one of 4 remaining spots. This is the journey to the finals of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. Witness the thrilling action from 5 to 10 December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
0614104107. That is our voice note line. Your X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. We're struggling a bit with the Facebook and YouTube page, but hopefully we'll get everything right tomorrow. Let's go to the Free State. Masuta, good evening.
Aldrin, how are you?
Good, how's it?
I'm all right, man. I just wanted to make a comment or ask the guy from the post office from the PRP. As to how really are they prepared to rescue the post office. Because I think the post office has been in operation a couple of years back. So in terms of technological advancements, the post office is a bit backward. So I wanted to ask that guy as to how far are they in developing the post office into a modern business.
Yeah. But that's why I was speaking about the public-private partnerships and looking at private partners to help get them there.
Yes. And the other issue, mostly PRP people, they are mostly in for making money, not really skill business
Yeah. Okay.
It's a problem.
Okay. Unfortunately, Masuta, the wind there keeps on blowing into your mouthpiece, but I think your point has been made. 0614104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Afternoon, Aldrin, on the post office issue. I don't know whether one should keep on maintaining the postal box. I mean, ever since the whole year, I can receive like 2 mails. One will be to renew the box, and then one will be from these shops, clothing shops. So people are no longer circulating their messages through letters to the post offices. The one post office in Loitregat is only saving the elderly to get their pensions and maybe the renewal of the vehicle license. The rest is dead. At least Polokwane is quite so busy. I ordered a parcel from offshore. I had to go and collect it from Polokwane, driving from Loitregat. So it's a problem. It's a problem with the post office.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. It's Mulefele here, somewhere in the Free State. You know, Aldrin, there's no such thing, absolutely no such thing as the terminology confiscation that exists to the police, it seems. To them, that means take, grab, and share everything. And now that we are in the festive season, many of them who drink, they are not even going to bother to buy alcohol because they know that is 24 on top of 24. Bottle
for free
on top of bottle.
When couples are fighting, there are some people who may, out of the good heart, try to intervene. But sometimes it's very difficult. You may end up in the middle when those two sides sometimes get along well and then they got against you from both sides. Sometimes you cannot, it's human nature. You see that this is out of control. After all, why should someone beat somebody else? A woman should not be beaten in the first place. People should converse and talk other than fighting. So from human nature side, you feel you have to intervene. But sometimes you may be left. Some people are really crazy in the street. You need to have a good backup. Otherwise, you may be left in the middle of the mess.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
We've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we're playing out with Gladys Knight, End of the Road. And our parting shot is from Doe Firebow, who once said, "Every day do something that will inch you closer to a better tomorrow." And Solomon is reading our credits this evening.
You should understand, like I understand you. 'Cause babe, I know the difference between...
Good day, SAFM listeners, and good evening. Behind the mic today, we had Mr. Aldrin Sampear, and we had Tumi on the sports desk. Big thank you to the production team, Temba, Kanya, Husani, Patrick, and Lundi, making sure that we have a wonderful show.